try it again?
Yes, please.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting of the work group to review the design and implementation of teaching performance assessments to order. And welcome all of you here. I can't tell you how excited we are to have this opportunity to meet new people, to catch up with some folks who've been along the journey with us for many years, if not decades, and to take this opportunity to really pause and reflect on the work of performance assessment, how it plays, and how we can maximize its utility and usefulness in our system of teacher preparation and licensure. So I want to thank all of you again for saying yes to serve on this work group. We are going to have very rapid pace, and the staff and the team will explain that. But I think we're up to it. I think we're up to it. So I'm really just very happy to bring you all here. So first of all, first order of business, will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Here.
Lisa, here. Tisha, Mario. Here. Diaz Catano.
Here.
Jan Daca.
Here.
Kathy Quisha.
Here.
Vanessa Escobar. Here. Arthur Estrada Venelas. Here. Harvey. Pauline Haseman.
Here.
Alicia Herrera. Here. Linda Hong.
Oh, I'm sorry, here.
Jason Morgan.
Here.
Joshua Northam.
Here.
Benjamin Odell.
Here.
Mandy Redford.
Here.
Kathleen Rowley.
Here.
Rebecca Sutter.
Here.
Gina Sloan. Shayna Sullivan. Paula Badez. Julia Walliner.
Here.
Matt Wallace. Beverly Young.
Here.
Have a call.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Madam Recording Secretary. So our first item of business, next item of business is to elect a chair pro tempore who will serve, or actually two chairs pro tempore who will serve, I'm sorry? Wait, I forgot one very important thing, which is Commissioner Danette Brown, would you please lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please stand.
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so back to business. The item 1A is the election of chairs pro tem who will serve as the temporary presiding officers to lead us in this work. We are planning to have an election of two co-chairs tomorrow. Once you've had a chance to spend some time together, there will be a nomination and election process tomorrow before we close the meeting. I see here that the next part of this is for me to open for public comment. Is there any member of the public who's here who would like to address the RDI-TPA work group? Seeing none, let's see, do I need to read this whole script there? Yes, no, yes, okay. I'll read it just because this is how we do. We've got Zoom participants as well. So let's see. If there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. We have a 2-minute time limit for public comment. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments? There are no public comments. So now this item is closed for public comment, and we would like to move forward and say that we have asked Dr. Mandy Redfern and Dr. Tina Sloan if they would serve as co-chairs pro tem for this meeting until we elect the work group chairs, co-chairs tomorrow on day 2. So are there any other nominations that you would like us to put in consideration before we take action on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion to appoint Dr. Mandy Redfern and Dr. Tina Sloan to serve as chairs pro tem for this meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Beverly Young, seconded by, can't see the name, but Ben Odell. Okay, great. Is there discussion? Those in favor, then please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. And I would like to invite Mandy to take over the meeting you'll be chairing today. Wonderful, thank you. Thank you.
I now convene the September 19th through 20th, 2024 RDI-TPA Workgroup meeting. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Workgroup to review the design and implementation on teacher performance assessments. I'd like to remind everyone about the meeting procedures before we get to today's agenda. We all have workgroup members attending here in person, but the public also has the option to attend in person at the commission office, or they are eligible to participate remotely through Zoom webcast or a US toll-free phone number. Please note the microphones above us. The meeting room technology includes built-in microphones, speakers, cameras, and monitors. The ceiling microphones are always on and will pick up everything that is said at all times. So please be aware that anything that is said in this room will be captured on the archived recording of the meeting. Therefore, any side conversations should be kept to a minimum, if at all, while you're in this room. And I believe they're green when they're recording, and when they're not, they turn red. Zoom identification. We'd like to ask the members of the public who attend the meeting via Zoom and would like to make a public comment to check their Zoom identification. Your Zoom ID is the name used when logging into the meeting. It's important that the Zoom identification is accurate so we can call on you appropriately during the public comment. Speaking of public comment, next we'll cover the public comment procedures. The chair pro tem will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item and ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Individuals who attend the meeting at the commission office will need to submit a request to address the work group card and present that to the meeting moderator. They're over there on that table as you enter the room. Meeting moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak. At that time, the individual will be able to approach the table and are welcome to share their comments. Individuals who joined the meeting via the Zoom webcast will need to click on the raise hand icon to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on the item. The moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak by calling their Zoom identification. At that time, the individual will be prompted to unmute their microphone and they will be able to share their comment. The Zoom ID name used by the member of the public to join the Zoom meeting will be displayed to the public when the individual public provides public comment. And then individuals who join the meeting through the US toll-free number will need to press *9 on their phone to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on one of the items. The moderator will notify the individual it is their turn to speak by calling their phone number and will allow them to unmute their telephone. At that time, the individual will be prompted to press *6 and we will be able to share their comment. Please note that only a partial phone number will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker to speak on a particular agenda item. And we ask that you keep your remarks brief and focused on the particular item that you're speaking to. The last note is regarding recording. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, the archived audio and video will be available via the commission's website. All right, so the next item is item 2A, the opening remarks of representatives from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Are there any remarks from our representatives?
I have some comments. I would just like to echo Executive Director Sandy's comments and welcome you all to this amazing work group. The energy in the room is palpable, and I just can't wait to hear and see what we come up with. I think that all of you, we really appreciate your expertise, and thank you so much for giving up your time for this amazing work.
Commissioner Francois. Commissioner Francois, are you online and would you like to make remarks?
I am here. I will, can you hear me? I want to echo Commissioner Brown's remarks about our gratitude and appreciation for you all serving in this capacity. This has been long, encouraging and powerful work. And as I look at the list of folks who are going to be revisiting it, I'm encouraged that the next phase is going to be even better than it was before. So thank you so much for being here and for committing to this process for the long haul.
Other comments?
I will just say, I'm Mary Bixie Sandy. I'm the executive director here at the commission. Spend a fair amount of time in this room. I will say this is my favorite kind of work, to bring educators from all walks of education into the same room to discuss meaty issues of policy, and how we get this work done is the best work we get to do. So again, I thank you all for saying yes to this, and I'm really looking forward to our time together, as quick as it will be. I was thinking just as we were getting started about the statute that SB 1263 that established, called for this work group to be in place, although the commission called for it months before the legislation, which is now on the governor's desk, was moved through the legislature, and it called for 1/3 of the members at least to be classroom teachers. And that's a hallmark of the work of our standards board here at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Our work is only as good as our connection is to the people who are doing the work in the classroom and preparing the workforce for the classroom. And we are always seeking to be informed by that critical community of practice. As we prepared, and my colleague here, Adam Ebrahim, who will speak in a moment, went through all of the applications to serve on this work group. It was a very impressive group of people who were very eager to do this. As we got down to the final 24, all of you, we ran some demographics, and 23 out of 24 of you hold a credential, a teaching credential of some kind, or some other type of credential. And that's great. Our foundation for all of this work has to be the classroom. Really, what needs to happen in the classroom? That's the point where it all happens, and everything else is system to support what's happening in that room, including what we do here at the commission, which is set standards and design performance assessments to be part of preparation. So that's a very exciting just factoid about, or piece of trivia about this group, which is not the least bit trivial. Just that grounding that you all bring to classroom practice. So thank you again. And I really am completely delighted to introduce Adam Ebrahim, who is working with the Glenn Price Group and came on board a couple of months ago now to get us going on this work and to bring enormous capacity to organizing this in a way that will make sure all voices are heard and that we really are engaged in a dialectic. He and I talk daily about the dialectic, and sometimes that it's a little hotter in that room and sometimes it's a little cooler, but the dialectic is a really important part of what we're doing, sharing the ideas that make what we ultimately do stronger. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam for a few remarks.
Thank you, Executive Director Sandy, and welcome. This is such a great day. We have known you on spreadsheets. We have known you by resume. We have imagined what this group would do together, and to see you all here, almost all of you here, it's just, I can't express how wonderful this is to see this come to fruition in this way, and what a difference a year makes. Executive Director Sandy referenced that the piece of legislation that created this entity, this body that you are a part of, you're an appointed member of, sought to do away with teacher performance assessments completely. We removed the section of code 44320.2, which you will be looking at today, entirely. And what we have here is an opportunity. We have an opportunity for a balance of perspectives from classroom teachers, from teacher faculty, and teacher performance assessment experts to put their minds together to go back to those foundational documents, that foundational code, which you'll look at today, which I don't know if you'll agree with me on this. If ever a piece of education code captured a vision, I think it would be that one.
I would agree with you.
And to right the ship, to help chart a new course for performance assessment in the state moving forward. The other thing I'd like to add is just that there are many of you in this room that have taken a performance assessment as part of your own teacher preparation, myself included. And so we have this kind of full circle happening, right? We've had this sort of the first iteration of performance assessment. We find ourselves in this incredible moment. And you know, if I could ask for one thing, it would be to really focus on listening for these first 2 days, listening to the people around the table. We're gonna endeavor to do some small groups and still be compliant with Bagley Keene Act, and really listen. And then when you go back to your schools, right, to your campuses, to talk to the people that interact with performance assessment, you know, whether they're your colleagues on staff, whether they are your teacher candidates or the teachers in your classroom that you are supervising, and talk to them, ask our end users of the performance assessment system for information, for ideas, for input, and bring that back here. And the dialectic we have talked about is we want to draw in information from the field, from the people that are experiencing this, from the people that have really good ideas. And we want to see that parked in our public comment section, right? So encourage people to participate in this process. You hear us reading from a script. You know, we are here in person, but there is a broader audience as well. And, you know, with that, I will ask for just one more thing, which is, please forgive me, I'm using a PC. So you may have seen me bumbling with the screen share here. I'm going from Mac, which is right by my leg here, to a PC. So just maybe by meeting 3, I'll get it. But for now, I'd just like to ask for a little bit of grace. And with that, back to you, Madam Chair Pro Tem.
So the next item is item 3A, work group to review the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessment orientation. So this is an informational item, and I would like to invite Mr. King. Will you please begin the presentation?
Well, yeah, Dr. Redfern, I think we could start with introductions.
Oh,
and
great.
maybe you could show us how it's done and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and anything else you'd like to add, and then we could counterclockwise all the way back to the beginning.
Hi, everyone. I am Mandy Redfern. I am a second grade teacher in the La Cañada Unified School District. I've been there for 24 years. I also adjunct on the side occasionally and support candidates through the induction process at my school site, as well as I am the chair of the Credentials and Professional Development Committee for CTA State Council.
Go after you. Just kidding. Hi, Linda Hong. I just returned to the classroom after being out of the classroom for 4 years as a literacy coordinator. I am a dyslexia specialist. I spent 17 years of teaching as a special education teacher, K-12, variety of settings, special day, resource, special programs. And then I went 4 years literacy. From the dyslexia world, I decided to go into literacy. And then I got tired of being in charge of everyone's data, and I just wanted to be with me, my data, my classroom. What was a beautiful dream. And then I'm a kinder teacher against my will. And oh my God, I hate them. My kids are cute. I love them. They're going to be fine. I have a beautiful smile I keep on for 6 hours a day. So I am here as a part of, I'm excited to see my colleague over here with Los Angeles Unified school district. I'm also here as part of the International Dyslexia Association Los Angeles branch. So that's where my passion is. It's about reading dyslexia. And I've also been an adjunct. I worked for our district intern program in our literacy programs, facilitating those. And I also just took the RDI-TPAs just last year. And I have so much to share. I'm gonna keep it smiling.
Hi, everyone. My name is Talia Diaz Cataño, but I go by Cataño. I teach government economics at Roosevelt High School in LA, so in LAUSD, all the Rough Riders. And I'm a national board certified teacher. And so in our district, we get to mentor new teachers, new educators. And so I have experience in that way. I'm also a mentor teacher, guiding teacher with my alumni program, TEP, at UCLA. So I also see my student teachers going through the process of TPA that I went through as well. And the last thing is, I actually got here through UCLA, which is our union, and CFT and CTA. So kind of thinking about that, how to make education more accessible to folks that look like and work in our community.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Escobar. I was a classroom teacher for 15 years, and the past 2 years I've transitioned to the director of teacher residency for a consortium of 12 organizations with 18 schools, which is really exciting. In the classroom, I focused a lot of, I worked with Chime Institute, and we did a lot, our model is inclusion. So with my residents, I'm really pushing a lot of inclusive practices. While I was a classroom teacher, I ran and developed our mentorship program, really focusing on new teacher support. And when I went to get my master's, I wrote my entire research paper on mentoring for first-year teachers. So I'm excited to talk a lot more about how this will affect first-year teachers as well. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juliette Wallleitner, and I am at Fresno State, where I serve as the Director of Educator Preparation and Accreditation. That means I support the coordinators of all 14 of our educator preparation programs, but really do a lot of work with our teacher education. I also serve as the director of the San Joaquin Valley Writing Project, which is housed at Fresno State, and I'm part of the executive committee overseeing the California Writing Project. But at Fresno State, as some of you know, we have the FAST, which is the only commission-approved teacher performance assessment that is controlled by the institution. So I provide a lot of support to that and can bring that perspective to this work. So, thanks, excited to work with you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cretia. I work for the University of Southern California. I'm the director of accreditation and credentialing. So all things K-12 at the entire university come through my little group. I just turned out on the Commission on Accreditation, and I thought I was done traveling up here, but here I am again. So it's kind of fun. I also adjunct, I taught for UMass Global. I taught the diversity course. I also taught the inclusion course and family collaboration courses. I've taught all of the Ed Specialist mild to moderate courses at University of Southern California. I also currently hold my special ed credential. I was a special ed teacher forever, and people kind of had to drag me out of the classroom kicking and screaming, but I've transitioned pretty good. So I've been in the higher ed, realm for a bit now, and I still miss kids, but I find opportunities to kind of go back in. I've served on board of directors for a charter school and had a chance to kind of mentor some people and that sort of thing. But also was on the literacy design team. So I'm kind of bringing those perspectives into this work, and I'm very excited, and I'm thrilled to death to meet all of you.
Awesome, thank you, Kathy. I'm Dr. Ursula Estrada Rivales, and I serve as the executive director of the School of Education, but I'm an alumni of Roosevelt High School. So that's why I was like, yay, go. Anywho, so I have started out my career as a bilingual educator in LAUSD, where I served for 6 years, and then I moved on to administration. I've been an elementary school principal, middle school principal, principal of a continuation high school. All of that to say I've spent a lot of time leading teachers. And so from there, I ended up at Azusa Pacific University, where I became a member of the Cal APA design team. And that's what brings me here with you today. So it's a pleasure to meet you all.
I'm Brent Ducor. I'm a professor of education at San Jose State University. I'm also the director of the Center for Innovation and Applied Education Policy. I was trying to think about how I got here, and I think the best way to describe it is I started as a performance assessment advocate in 1982 when I went to UC Santa Cruz, and I learned what feedback, portfolios, project-based learning were, all those things I didn't understand at the time because I was just a student. I then had a chance to become a teacher at Central Park East Secondary School in New York City, founded by Deborah Meyer, and a part of the Coalition of Essential Schools. And as a teacher, I learned a lot about portfolio assessment, rubrics, moderation, all the stuff that, again, I didn't have a technical language for. We just sort of did it. And I was lucky enough to go back to grad school, pick up a few more ideas, and join the RDI-TPA design group, which also gave me a deeper insight into performance-based assessment for teachers. I've written about formative assessment quite a bit, classroom-based assessment, strategies that really build on equity and excellence, and real-time feedback. So I'm deep in the weeds, and I've also worked with our candidates at San Jose State all the way through teaching TPA, working my course around it. So I hope to be able to bring some insights to this process. Thank you.
Devin Beasley, I am the TPA coordinator for Cal State University Dominguez Hills, former middle school teacher for 15 years and spent the last 7 years or so supporting all candidates, single subject, multiple subject, and our education specialist, most recently with the Cal TPA. And I was appointed here by Shireen Pavry, the Vice Chancellor of Education and Leadership.
Hi, I'm Lisa Brown, and I used to be a new teacher in San Francisco Unified School District. Homegrown, 24 years in the district, came through the district, as a new teacher, got mentored, and now I'm teaching with some of the students that I've taught in middle school, which has been really interesting and fun. And served in a variety of capacities in this district as a PAR coach, as a math curriculum content and coach writer, curriculum writer, taught during the pandemic on Zoom with kids, and also most recently likes to go back into the classroom every once in a while. Taught newcomer math at Mission High School. But my current role right now is with San Francisco Urban Teacher Residency Program. I am a teacher on special assignment, or TSA. I don't really like that because it sounds like airport stuff. You might all know it as TOSAs in other places. But yeah, I really appreciate and love the vision, values, and guardrails of San Francisco Unified. And I think that's why I've kind of stayed there for most of what I didn't anticipate as being a career. I guess this is a career now in education, so.
I understand that. So, I'm Al Herrera. I've worn a lot of hats in education. So I am an assistant professor at Sac State in the College of Education in the Child and Adolescent Development Program. And so currently that is what I'm doing. And so how I connect to this place is that I'm on the working group that's creating the PK3 credential program for our college. And so my angle is the developmental angle. And so I have a degree in developmental teaching. And I worked in teacher education as a lecturer in other institutions, and I work with our future teachers at Sac State. And my areas of research have to do with identity development in the classroom, and so ways that teacher identity and teachers mediate the identity development of their students, in their instruction, curriculum, all of those things in the classroom, racial identity development, their own identity development, like all of those interactions that happen. But before that, I was a teacher myself. And so I was a P through 12 teacher. So I have a single subject teaching credential. I have a multiple subject teaching credential and a bilingual authorization. So I was a classroom teacher for 20 years before I went back to get my doctorate. So I don't know. So I've been around. So I'm here. I love teachers. I love watching teachers. I love watching all of the things that happen. I'm really interested in the critical consciousness development of teachers, the reflective practice that happens with teachers when they're, thinking about what they're doing and, all of those things. And so this process of how we can facilitate that and scaffold that, all the formative assessments that we can build into this process. I just think, the developmental angle is really important. So I'm here to contribute in that way and also learn a lot from everybody. What we can do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shayna Sullivan. I was a high school English teacher when I was in the classroom. I've been in teacher education for a number of years in a lot of different kinds of roles. Currently, I'm the Dean of Alder Graduate School of Education. We have a residency program that is community-based and really focused on diversifying the teacher workforce and developing beginning teachers who reflect the demographics of the community.
I'm Rebecca Sackett. I have a mild mod credential from Dominguez Hills. I know. I work in San Ana Unified and my whole career's been in Orange County. I've been devoted, focused on teacher leadership for around 10 years now. So I've been out of the classroom in various teacher leadership roles. I currently work in our support services department. So, but I also serve on our teacher induction advisory board and serve as a mentor for new teachers and a term called partnership learning coach. So we have levels of support for our credential candidates and I get to be on all the levels of support. Excited to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Wallace. I am former middle and high school Sacramento area math teacher, and now at UC Davis, and I have the privilege of working with aspiring middle and high school math teachers in the Sacramento area. Beyond being a teacher educator, I have an interest and spend a lot of time thinking about assessment, classroom assessment, in particular formative assessment, or equitable assessment practices.
My name is Patricia Camarillo. I am a teacher of the visually impaired or education specialist in visual impairment in Fresno Unified. I've been doing this 18 years, but shout out to Fresno State because I got my multiple subject, Fresno raised and born. And so, yeah, so I'm here with part of a national board certified teachers. I help support some of our teachers that are in our school district getting national board certified. And I've been doing some work with the BIPOC out of CTA and EA work. And so, yeah, I'm excited to I would love seeing that national boards picking up. We're getting a lot more teachers coming in, and this work sounds like it ties very closely to it.
Hi everyone, you weren't lying. This is a really great group. My name is Ben Odell. I'm the director of the intern program with Sacramento County Office of Education. I've been in that role about a year. Prior to that, I was a teacher for the last 20. And I had a bunch of different roles in K-12 education. I was an English teacher, instructional coach, site administrator. Obviously, I did mentorship for newer teachers, student teachers, etc. Graduated from San State with my credential. And then, so more recently, with my role as director for the intern program, I'm overseeing and supporting about 170 interns in the Sacramento region.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Rowley, and I started in a kindergarten classroom as a bilingual paraprofessional in LA Unified, and I went to TEP at UCLA for my single subject credential in English. I'm a national board certified teacher, and I've been in the English classroom, still am in the English classroom for the last 17 years, and I also am an adjunct. In my school district, I'm the cohort leader for national board certification, and I support early career educators as a mentor, and also work with a nonprofit Above and Beyond, which helps sustain teachers through the first 5 years of their career and supports them. And I'm a leader in the UCLA Writing Project, where we're looking at intersections of supporting educators right now with the ideas of diversity, equity, and belonging in conjunction with the burgeoning machine learning that exists. So I'm interested to see how assessment is impacted by what we need to understand about every day we learn more. And so
I'm Joshua, Josh Notham. Thank you for pronouncing my last name right. It doesn't happen often. I know. Let's see. So many great things. I'm a lot of students' favorite teacher. There you go. I teach at Burbank Unified. I've taught preschool through 12. I've been teaching for 14 years now. I'm also a lecturer at Cal State Los Angeles, where I teach social science subject methods to the secondary and elementary students there. Differential program.
Hi, I'm Colin Haseman. I spent 20 years teaching social science in London. The last 8 years of that, I was responsible for the teaching candidates that were at London University on a school-based model. So we had within our school 20 student teachers from London University, and I looked after all of their practical work within the school. In 1998, I came over to Stanford, did also part-time work at San Francisco State for a while on a satellite program that was held at Kenyatta. But working with Linda Darling-Hammond on the very first PAC work that we were doing, and so I became the PAC coordinator, which involved lots of training of all of the teachers there. And then I did go back to England for 3 years, but then came back to be eventually the TPA coordinator. And that's what I do mainly now. I also lecture and teach a variety of classes at Stanford, supervising classrooms.
Hello, I'm Beverly Young. Listening to all of you, I'm thinking, okay, what things do I want to say? It's like I didn't plan very well because I got involved listening. I started as an elementary classroom teacher, became a teacher education faculty member at Cal State Fullerton, moved on to the system office, vice chancellor in academic affairs for teacher ed, the job that Shireen now has, Devin, that you mentioned. I was a longtime commissioner, and my history with this work with TPA goes back to the many work groups I've been on through the commission. I think I was on the TPA standards writing initial boards, and I've been on the advisory boards for PACT and at TPA, as well as for FAST. So a lot of TPA stuff in my background, as well as CTC stuff. I currently direct the Above and Beyond Teaching Foundation, which Kate mentioned. It's a nonprofit organization that recognizes outstanding California public high school teachers in the most challenging schools as nominated by former students. And we recognize those teachers and award them, and then I hate to say use them, but we use them then to, as Kate also mentioned, work with early teachers in both support and helping to retain them in the profession. It's nice to be back here. And I agree, Mary and Adam, you guys have done a great job of assembling a very impressive group.
All right, good afternoon and what's good, everybody. My name is Jason Lee Morgan. I've been interested in education policy since I was 7 years old. Not intentionally, but I was part of the 80s bus program. So I was born in South Central Los Angeles, and second grade, I was bused to Northridge. So I went from a Black and brown community to white, Jewish, and Korean, had all these culture shocks. And it always stuck with me about why certain communities got different types of educational experiences. And that stayed with me all the way to being a teacher at Compton Unified at Dominguez High School. So I got your name down. It feels over there. But proud to have been serving at the school for 18 years. This is going on my year 19 as math, data science, and AVID teacher. I've served as an instructional curriculum specialist, instructional coach, staff development, AVID coordinator, activities director. And we also focus on teaching culturally responsive mathematics in Compton, and then also work with the Cal State Long Beach Research Foundation with a couple programs there. Serve as an educator advisor for Teach Plus and Ed Trust West, part of the California Educator Diversity Action Network, about making sure, or how can we have students, their experience with their teachers in the classroom, how is it reflective of the community? So I got another name written down there. I need to see the tag though. And then I'm also an early career teacher mentor with the Above and Beyond organization. Thank you. Thank you for letting me say what's good. Intro.
Okay, Mary Vic Sandy, Executive Director since 2011 and product of the San Francisco Public Schools. Also part of the busing program there in a different decade than yours, and I'm not going to say which one. But so thrilled again to have all of you here. So.
My name is Adam Ibrahim. I'm still, since the last time you heard from me, I was raised by a teacher. I'm married to a teacher. I became a teacher at Fresno Unified School District. Shout out. I taught at Fresno High School, English Language Arts and History of Social Sciences, trained to be an IB teacher, taught IB curriculum. Afterwards, I moved on to become an ELA, ELD, History, Social Science, Literacy Consultant. That was all on the card for Fresno County Office of Education. And in that capacity, I supported about 9 districts with in that realm. But more kind of focused on developing. This was on the heels of the Smarter Balance rollout. And so working with teachers to develop classroom embedded performance-based assessments and integrate them into units and pull them backwards with nice formative assessments that were rich and worth doing. Did that privately for a while afterward. And then went on to district administration as a LCAT director, continuous improvement, and did a number of things after that, including working on national board projects and in education policy. And, was just thrilled. I think when you found me, Mary, I was working for a tech company, or when you pulled me up to do this, I was working in a tech company, kind of looking at how to use AI to create ongoing dialogic formative assessments. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be among this group. This is just incredible. And I just thank you for being here. All right. I'm going to do a quick overview, and then all of the, we're going to go over Bagley-Keene, and this is going to be the part of the meeting that is really important, right? This is the public's meeting. This is the public space. And so we're going to go over it and just sort of make sure that everybody's on the same page with what is required of a Bagley-Keene meeting. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Robert's Rules of Order. So Workgroup overview. Now we have developed a scope and sequence for the Workgroup. We have a lot of timelines that we need to meet. The most immediate being the February commission meeting timeline, where we need to present our initial recommendations. It does not need to be a comprehensive set of fully polished recommendations. It is a good way, you can think of it as perhaps initial thinking to share with commissioners so they may give us feedback. And there you go. We are now in a dialectic with the commission, working, sending, thinking, revising. So today is an orientation. This is about meeting each other, day one. Tomorrow we're going to start and we're going to talk a little bit about the charge of the work group, and we're going to slowly sort of sink into the materials. Tomorrow we are going to endeavor to do some fun breakout groups. And then, really have your voice in the room. This is the most you're going to hear from me, is in this part of this meeting. Or unless you need help. If you need help on anything, in your service of the work group, I'm your guy. So we are going to, after this, we're going to take up needed modifications to performance assessments. And that's going to be our meeting 2. We're going to hear from performance assessment models, and we're going to dig in. Afterward, we're going to take up the topic of embedding performance assessments. And then after that, strengthening accreditation. And after that, program completer survey questions and local scoring. These are not accidental topics. These are required in pending statute, and most definitely in the charge that was approved by the commission in August. One thing I would like to say about the design of this is, starting in October, we're going to start to develop some recommendations. And that doesn't mean that we're done with those recommendations. So coming out of that October meeting, we may have some initial thinking about needed modifications to performance assessments, but that doesn't mean that the chance to address that has passed, right? At the beginning of every subsequent meeting, we'll be able to reopen our recommendations after we have time to, put all of the good ingredients into the crock pot, as Commissioner Brown is fond of saying, letting it stew. And then we come back and we say, you know what? I was reflecting. I connected with practitioners, with people that experience it. I listened to them, I got their ideas, I talked to my colleagues, and we're going to be able to reopen it at the beginning of each meeting so that we're able to continuously improve these recommendations heading into February. So that's kind of our hack to get around the tight timeline, is just to dedicate some beginning time for each meeting of revisiting our recommendations. So we get through this, and then we present in this very room on February 6th and 7th your initial recommendations to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. It is Zoom. You can watch it. You can come to the room. You can view it, and then the Commission will consider the item and discuss and send feedback to this body. And then we will have a couple of chances to reconsider and send back before we send the final draft forward for action at the June Commission meeting. The plan that we have here is a tentative plan. This is our best guess of how we think we can hit the critical benchmarks we need to in this very, very aggressive timeline. When you elect your chairs, your co-chairs, they will reflect the will of this body in planning sessions. And so if there's anything in the sequence that you feel like we're spending too much time here, we're not doing enough here, they're going to be able to fully put their hands on this on your behalf and shape it. Okay. So this is not set in stone. This is your committee, or this is your work group. This is your body. We are here to help articulate what you need in order to get the charge done. Pretty much. Is that fair to say? Yeah. And then after that, we fixed everything, and we're good. We're
on the next decade of work. That's all.
There you go. Yeah, I think we have a good start of some people to look to, though. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Bagley-Keene Public Meeting Act, Open Meeting Act, which we will call the Act from now on, so I don't have to say that again. The whole intent of this is that the public has a seat at the table. Right? The entire design of this process is to ensure that we are considering and deliberating on matters under the jurisdiction of this body with the public. So not, as the light keeps going on and off, not off to the side, not in closed doors, but that we are having public meetings. So that is why you are in the camera shot. That is why we have microphones that are recording. That is why Zoom is watching. That is why after every item, you're going to hear us ask for public comment. Right? Because the public has a right to comment on everything. They have a right to access everything you're accessing. And so you're going to see that we post agendas and all of that, and the resources are available online. And that's the intent, is really this is to ensure that the public has a seat at the table. This group, so why is this group under Bagley-Keene? That is because there are different ways that Bagley-Keene can come into effect for a group. One of them is when an entity like the Commission on Teacher Credentialing creates another entity, an advisory group or an advisory body, to give them recommendations. So they have just kind of spun off a subset of folks to provide them with recommendations. That is this group, and that brings us under Bagley-Keene. There is a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1263, that calls for this group as well. So we have aligned the two things. But on January 1st, if this bill is signed, we will then fall under the statute of Senate Bill 1263, which we're going to take a look at in Education Code Section 44320.4. So that's sort of why we're under Bagley-Keene. What counts as a meeting? So you have been appointed to these positions, and you fall under Bagley-Keene, and so you can accidentally create a meeting under certain circumstances. So a meeting is not just when we are sitting in this room around this table having conversations. A meeting can happen in a lot of different places. If 13 of you, which is the quorum, the majority, happen to have a conversation in a circle in the cafe about an item under our jurisdiction, you have just convened a meeting under Bagley-Keene. So we need to be really careful about who we're talking to, how many people we're talking to, and what we're talking about. I'm going to go into this a little bit just to make sure everybody is on the same page. We're going to give you email addresses, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But there's also guidance from legal counsel that provides you additional details on the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act so that we can all make sure that our deliberations are in the public view and transparent. So it does not just mean the cafe. We are living in a social media age. Maybe some of us are in the same interesting circles. Maybe we show up on the same formative assessment thread on Facebook or something else. So a meeting, this act applies to those spaces as well. So if you encounter work groups, if somehow you comment and you comment back and you comment back and we hit that magic number of 13 and we're talking about formative assessment, which very well could be a topic under the jurisdiction of this body, welcome to your meeting. We are under Bagley-Keene. So, you really just need to be mindful about who you're talking to about what. I believe there's a common rule, the rule of two. If you want to designate your study buddy or a person that you're going to sort of be with and talk about the issues outside of the meeting, that's a good way to do it. As long as they don't have study buddies who have study buddies who have study buddies who have study buddies, right? Then you have violated Bagley-Keene. And that would be a serial meeting, which is when you're not all standing in a circle, but let's say that you send an email to then 3 members of this group are on the thread. Maybe it's the California Writing Project group here. I'm on the advisory board of it as well, so this is feasible, although it doesn't. But and that is forwarded to other people that then comment and forwarded to other people. You may not have had 13 people or quorum on the one message, but if you're discussing the same topic and you hit that magic number 13, that's considered a meeting under Bagley-Keene. There's also the hub and spoke, right? So we've done the standing in a circle, we've done the serial meetings, and now we're talking about one person who may talk to a couple of members and then turn around and talk to 2 more, and then turn around and talk to 2 more, and then get on text messages with another. And then once that person hits 13, they have also created a meeting. Okay? So that's a hub and spoke model of bringing it under Bagley. So those are the different types of meetings that you can inadvertently find your way into. So please do your best to avoid them. And topics under jurisdiction, we'll get into this, but if it's about Blake Snell's wonderful performance with the Giants the other day, then that's totally fine. Sorry. But if we're talking about performance assessment, policy, maybe not. Okay, definitely not. Okay, so deliberation. Deliberation is what we're doing here today. We're in a group talking about the topics within our jurisdiction and sharing experiences, sharing knowledge, sharing understanding on the way to making decisions. Okay. So that is the denotative meaning of deliberation. But deliberation could be many, many things. It could be meeting up before this to share information. It could be meeting in the hall. It could be sharing information that could lead to a decision. The deliberation, in the same way that a meeting is kind of an expansive concept, deliberation is also a bit of an expansive concept, something to be mindful of. All right, this one's pretty easy. Subject matter jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction, a good way to think of this is anything that could feasibly be heard by this body, right? So back to my baseball example, if we're talking about the implications of the pitch clock, that is not within the jurisdiction of this entity. If we're talking about the different rates of different performance assessment pass rates for groups of people by teacher preparation course, that would be within the jurisdiction. So if somebody would stand up and present it and it wouldn't be out of place in this group, you might as well just think that it's under our jurisdiction. So we do, in order to be compliant with Bagley-Keene, we post the meeting agenda ahead of time, 10 days in advance. And so if you go to the CTC website, I think I've hyperlinked them in the communications. On upcoming meetings, you will see all of the meetings that we have scheduled from now until the end. There are also going to be hyperlinks to the handouts and the resources. Those might come a little later because our requirement is to get the agenda up. We have a lot of meeting that we do. We're going to be meeting with your co-chairs. We're going to be really integrating all the information back from you. But 10 days, we get the agenda up so you can see what's happening. At that time, I will send a communication out to all of you. And so you'll be aware, okay, this is what's coming up. It won't be a surprise. And then as we sort of get a week out, you'll start to see the resources populate. This first one's going to be a bit of a turnaround because what you're doing tomorrow is you're telling us what you need to know to deliberate. You're going to spend some time looking at the requirements, and then you're going to tell us all the questions you have, all the data you need, all the sources that you need. And that's what we're going to bring back in meeting 2, specifically in that one, to look at performance. This is the information you're going to find on a meeting notice. The law on this is actually kind of wonderful. The standard for a description of an agenda item is that a member of the public would not need to be clairvoyant in order to decide whether they're going to attend that item. So that's a great standard. I think that's wonderful. That's somebody should put that on a rubric.
It's a geek.
Sorry. All right. And so here's the description of the agenda. I think I'm don't point at this point. So this is really critical. This is a public space. The public is entitled to be heard on every item that we go through. Right? You're going to hear us call for public comment. They're entitled to be heard. We are limiting it to 2 minutes, which is on the longer side of things usually. But we also have opportunities for the public to attend via Zoom. We have opportunities for the public to post online. So every item has like a little file folder that goes with it. If anybody has resources or concepts or opinions or letters that they want to post on the item, they may do so there as well, and you can access it. We also are going to have an item in each agenda that is general public comment. So the public's ability to chime in, to share, to participate in this entity is not limited only to that space on each agenda item. They may have a comment that is under our jurisdiction that they want to say that wasn't agendized, and they may say that under the general public comment section, which we're going to have at the end. Now, for this body, we cannot take up an item presented in that public comment section, but we can agendize it for a subsequent meeting. So even if it's, it sounds like there are a lot of topics that this particular group would love to sink their teeth into. And so even if such a thing is presented, you will have to hold off and agendize it for a future. Okay, so who is who? You are the work group members. So you're fulfilling the work group charge and the law. Statute, once the governor signs the bill and it goes into effect on January 1st. So that is you. RDI-TPA work group staff. I am the primary point of contact for work group staff. Mary and I, or Executive Director Sandy and I, are the facilitators? Something of that nature.
Something.
We are staff for the work group. So we are specifically designated as the staff of this work group. I am, as legal counsel advised me to share, I am your safe person. If you need anything, if you have a question, if you're wondering about something, conflicts of interest, anything like that, I'm the person that you can email. And you have you're gonna have your own email address soon. And so that'll allow you to also communicate or to receive privileged communications from our we have CTC liaisons. And so we have 2 liaisons from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. We have Anna Marie Francois, who is with us virtually. And then we have Danette Brown. And so you'll see this throughout the time here. The entire entity is brought about with the idea that we can, by merging the perspectives in this room, we can come up with sort of a better iteration, a better vision. And so the commission only usually has one liaison to a work group. The commission decided to appoint a representative from K-12, which is Danette, and a representative from higher ed, which is Anna Marie Francois, who's watching. There she is. And so that's kind of the theme. The goal here is those are two incredibly important perspectives of end users that are immersed in the work of performance assessment. And so the idea here is that we really want to make sure that both voices are represented in everything, including reporting back to the commission. And then the CTC staff, could you raise your hand in the back? Your CTC staff, there they are. Hello. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Would you be willing to just say who you are and what you do? I'm sorry I didn't prep down. No?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Erin Sullivan. I am currently interim director of the Professional Services Division. So we see things like accreditation, grants, data dashboards, all of that.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Rising. I'm the Director of Performance Assessment Development for the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Great to see you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful panel and the work that you're about to do. My name is Phyllis Jacobson. I'm the administrator in the Professional Services Division. I have a long history with performance assessment in California, and I'm very eager to hear what you're coming up with. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Hickey. I am Administrator of Accreditation here in the Professional Services Division. Forgive me for standing up. I had an over-ambitious workout last night and my back out.
So the committee will just stop here for a second. Commission staff is a wealth of information. So we may come to points when we're deliberating. This meeting tomorrow will be a little bit different, just by the design is to generate questions. But in general, we may find ourselves needing specific information. The people that have that information are right there, and they have a lot of it, and it's all good. So, did you want to? Oh, so Rhonda Brown and Haiju Tural are, I just can't even, so putting this work group together, coming on as quickly as I did, these two have made that process, they have made this happen. So the reason that we are sitting here today, the reason that the hotels came, the reason that all of that was a work of a team, including the PST travel team, and Rhonda and Haiju, who everything that you're seeing in front of you, all of the coordination, all of that was done by them. And so I don't know if we could give them a round of applause. And then the last row I'd like to talk, let me just finish this piece. So the one exception is tomorrow, we're gonna be in 4 breakouts. And the purpose, and you're gonna be generating questions and sources that you wanna see. And so while it may be tempting to ask the people who know the answers, right? We're gonna hold that because we need to bring those questions and those requests into a common source so that we can send a common response to you and the public. That makes sense. All right, bringing us to the public. The public this is the public's body. This is the public space. The public may participate, and that's it. It's theirs. We are not formally using the full manuscript of Robert's Rules of Order. So those of you that are experienced in floor strategy, our union folks over here, it's not what we're doing here. But we will use some of the formalities of Robert's Rules of Order to just sort of create some consistency with how we vote, how we do motions, that kind of thing. The intent is not to distance people who are not familiar with the parliamentary procedure. Sometimes for those who do not spend their lives and time in such meetings, it can create a feeling of separation, of distance, and of a lack of access. And so that is 100% not our intent. If at any time you have a question about how the procedure should go, or please let me know. I'm happy to fill you in on anything you might need to know. And also, I would like to say that please do not feel the need to form your thoughts into this type of language. Share as you are, share your experience as it is, and speak as you would. These are 3 points that I think I'd like to go over. No, that I was told I need to go over. Let me be real about this. So we have a script. We don't know this stuff off the top of our head. There's a script that we read verbatim from to make sure that we're moving things along professionally and cleanly. And so that's this, and that's really the procedure. There are some points though to keep in mind that you can more think of them as norms that we should abide by. When there's an information item, that is only for information. If it's labeled information, we can't take action on it. When there's an information/action item, that is an item that is informational that the body may decide to take action on if you so choose. If there is something that is labeled action item only, that is an item that you do take action on, whatever that action is. Any action item requires deliberation. We talked a little bit about what that was: discussion, consideration, a motion, second, and a vote of the quorum, which is 13. On the quorum, so sometimes you get to a point where you do not want to vote in the affirmative or the negative. And you have two options there. One is abstention and one is recusal. And I wanted to just go over the difference between the two so that we're all on the same page with it. The first is an abstention, which means that I don't have enough information to make a decision. You probably see this like when people approve minutes and I wasn't there, so I'm going to abstain. A recusal is different. That signals that you may have a conflict of interest that would prevent you from voting one way or the other with an item. If you feel that is the case, then you are recusing yourself and you are deducted from the quorum. So let's say that we have 13 people and one person recuses himself. We have lost our quorum. If you do choose to recuse yourself, please, get up and exit the room and wait in the wonderfully appointed waiting room right outside the doors here. And staff will come get you when the item is over.
Yes. Since it's public, couldn't you just step out and be part of the public?
Oh, no, you cannot, because if you in any way, you don't want to be visible, because if there's an allegation that you tried to influence or you just want to remove yourself entirely from the deliberation and the vote.
Thank you.
Is that?
I also have a question. So a quorum of 13 for convening a meeting and taking action, but a vote on an action, does it require a 13 or is it a majority of those present? If you only have 20 people in the room, still need 13 or do you need 11?
So the quorum is for the appointed body. It will always be 13. If we have less than 13 people, we cannot vote on something. We do not have a meeting.
Right, but I'm asking, let's say you have 20 people here. Okay. We vote on something. You don't get 13 I votes, you get 11. And it's a majority of those voting.
That's sufficient.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. So it's not always 13 for approval of something. It's
No.
13 in order to vote. But it's a majority of those present.
Once you hit 13, you have activated the ability to vote. And then depending on what your denominator is at that moment in time determines the majority. Thank you. Right. One more thing. So that's it. I do want to just pause really quickly and let you know that today you're going to get instructions from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing for accessing your ctc.ca.gov account. So after the meeting today, after this meeting tomorrow, all subsequent communications from us are going to come to that email account. The reason for that is the information is subject to public records requests. And so Public Records Act requests. So if that is going to your personal email, then that can be opened. So we are going to just keep the conversations there. And then in addition to that, that allows our general counsel to send privileged emails to you, which one is waiting in your inboxes when you're able to access it. And it has information and guidance on all the things that we've covered in this brief orientation today. In addition, the team from the commission will be on hand tomorrow at lunch for any troubleshooting. So if you get back to your hotel this evening and there are security protocols in place, and so if you're trying to get through the multi-factor authentication and it's, there's some issues, do not worry. We'll have a team on standby at lunch tomorrow to help you through that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just if you had a CTC account already, they're going to use the same one. Is that correct? You have one already? I just termed out of my COA, so I'm assuming they're going to use the same one, not give me something. Okay.
So with that, I would like to pass it back to our Chair Pro Tem.
So we will now open for public comment, item 3A. If there are any members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Please be reminded that public comments are limited to 2 minutes. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. And this item is now open for discussion. Do any work group members have questions or comments regarding the presentation of 3A?
I would just like to thank you all for being that explicit with us regarding how this team will function. I really appreciated that.
Anyone else? With that, thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. And now we'll move to item 4A, which is to develop and adopt norms for the RDI-TPA work group. This, I would like to draw your attention, is an information/action item, so we can't take action on this item. Does our work group staff have a presentation for us?
Only to say that we have presented here or are sharing the norms that the commission uses.
Yes.
And so we are presenting this to you as a possible starting point for the consideration of your own norms. Madam Chair, my presentation is concluded.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments for item 4A? The public comment period for this item is now closed. This item is now open for work group members to discuss. So if we can start on slide 20, maybe take a few minutes to review the commission norms and then see if there's anything we'd like to add to it or remove. Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Anyone excited by what they see? Yeah.
One comment. Some of like the COA meetings, if they're like longer meetings, they actually put breaks within the agenda. That might be helpful.
You have a suggested frequency or that we
I found that, 10, like a short one, 10 minutes usually worked, how frequently? Every 2 hours, you think? Okay.
What was the
Well, it kind of fluctuated, it depended on everything, but I would say we usually had like, I'm gonna say we usually had like a 15-minute break in the morning, like in, between lunch and starting, and then another one in the afternoon. Sometimes, depending upon if the technology is working, people can get online or do whatever, we would have other impromptu breaks, but generally speaking, 1:15 in the morning and 1:15 in the afternoon, if it was, assuming it was like a 9 to 5 or 9 to 4.
So maybe we just add in 15-minute AM break and a 15-minute PM break. Yeah. Is that amenable? We will take regular breaks.
All right.
I love it.
Sorry. Are we required to sit the whole time for the meeting? Sometimes it's challenging to sit. Sometimes I need to stand, but I know we need to be visible.
The only impact I would assume is the microphones. Do they pick up regardless of where we are in the room? Okay.
This side, you need to be on this side.
So from where the seating is over, but if we need to get up and move around.
We would just stand up, like when we had to do that for the other meetings, we would just stand up right behind our chair. And that seemed to be okay.
And then what if we have some emergency and we get a personal call? Are we okay to step out for that?
Absolutely. You are welcome to, there's bathrooms right outside, even if you need to just take a breather. There's a lovely courtyard. If you need to do a quick lap to get the blood circulating, you are fully free and capable to use the space and the time as you see fit.
I have another scheduling question. Will all the meetings have the same format, meaning like first day 1 to 5 and then second day 3 to 3?
No. Could we add something to the first one? Maybe take care of self as needed. Work.
favorite.
So all things you might need. Fred?
Maybe it's just because I'm a feedback nerd. But that second bullet point, give and receive feedback respectfully. I like that. I also like the idea of warm and cool feedback. The idea of one thing I liked or one thing I'm hearing you said to validate something you may have heard, make sense of it. And then if you have something to offer as a kind of counter or perhaps another perspective, that you have space to do the warm and cool. Yeah, that we often start with. The warm can help too to get the cool ready to go. You know what I mean by warm and cool? I'm not talking about my temperature right now.
Candidates told me we needed to sandwich all of our comments.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't know if this is necessary. But you got me thinking about, and when I read it, around critique. I love the norm, critique work, not people. Yeah. I think if we're trying to engage in giving feedback and we are a diverse group, that we're centering that critique work and not people. I don't know if there's a fancy way you want to write that, but that's what I write on my poster.
I'm also gonna add, assume positive intent.
Maybe on the third bullet.
Yes, and whenever I see it and assume positive intent, I think it's only halfway there. I think you have to also include, take responsibility for impact. While my intent may have been positive, I may have unintentionally impacted someone negatively. So I think that balances it.
May take all these back to my team immediately.
Right. Assuming you've had enough time to digest. Do we have a motion from someone to adopt the norms?
A motion that we adopt these norms.
Thank you, Ursula. And do we have a second? Thank you, Devin. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Good job, everyone. All right. So the next item is 5A, which is the review of the RDI-TPA workgroup guidance. This is another informational item, so not an action item. Does our workgroup staff have a presentation on this item?
Madam Chair, we do not have a presentation on this item, only to say that reference for this is handout 5A, which has the charge as well as two sections of education code. One is current 44320.2 and one is pending 44320.4. If you need copies, let us know. This is also hyperlinked to the resource doc that I sent you last week.
Does everyone have access to handout 5A? Labeled at the bottom. So we will now open this item for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments for 5A? The public comment period for this item is now closed. This item is now open for discussion among the work groups members. Does anyone have any? Actually, I would like to recommend that we take just a few minutes to review the document before we begin the discussion if possible. Great. So there are three questions that we are going to use to help frame our conversation about what the charge is for this work group. And so the first one is asking, what are the performance assessment must-haves according to the education code? The second question is asking, what are we being asked to do as a work group? What's our job and responsibility? And then finally, what concepts or terms do we need more information about in order to do the work and be productive? So we're going to try to kind of frame our conversation around those three. I'm wondering, we've been working for about an hour and a half. Would this be a good time to take a 15-minute break? Give yourself some time to look at this, find the bathrooms. Is that amenable to staff?
Restrooms are right down the hall.
All right, so let's take 15 minutes and we'll come back at 2:40.
Enjoy the campus. It's beautiful out there. Take a walk. Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to call the meeting back to order at 2:47. Hopefully minus the cup dilemma. All other persons are taken care of. So the first question that we have been asked to answer in regards to 5A is, what exactly are the performance assessment must-haves that are listed in the statute of 44320.2, which is what you have in the handout. what I'd like us to do right now is work together with your table partner. So everyone has someone sitting with them, and if you don't, if you'll insert yourself as a triangle, can you just take a few minutes and make a list together of what the must-haves are? And then in about 10 minutes, what I'd like to do is go around and share out, and we'll have the first group share, and then the next group add anything that wasn't previously shared, so that we can get a list of the things that we must have in our performance assessment according to the law.
That's a question.
Yeah, Colin.
The code talks about the CSTPs as against the TPEs. Correct? Our performance assessments aligned with the TPEs rather than the CSTPs.
Well, but may I, okay, be one of the least of the experts on this topic in the room, but so the TPEs are a derivative of the CSTPs. Does everybody know what those letters mean when I say them? Anybody need me to say them out loud? Because I'm happy to.
Yes, someone does.
Okay, so the CSTP are the California Standards for the Teaching Profession that are intended to kind of cover the arc of teacher development across a career. The teaching performance expectations, TPEs, are what we have derived from those CSTPs to really focus on beginning teacher knowledge and ability. So there's a little bit of knowledge, but it's really focused on performance. What are performance expectations based on each of the categories of the CSTP? Am I getting to an answer to your question, Colin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a way, when we're talking about beginning teachers, it should be the TPEs that were written in there rather, I mean, that should be deleted in a sense.
It should be,
yeah.
You know, and just fun fact of history is that when this statute was written, I don't believe we had TPEs yet. Building TPEs based on the CSTP book. So but when we think about the alignment with CSTP, the TPEs were designed intentionally to be there.
Any other clarifying questions before we get started? All right, so introduce yourself to your table partner. Take about 10 minutes. If you'll just make a list, and then we'll share out in 10 minutes.
Nice to meet you.
Right?
The question. Okay, all right. I'll have to get back to the reasons then. Sorry about that. All right. So there was a good question that you brought up.
Favorite type to teach?
Right, okay.
So that's good.
I like.
Broad, I don't know. I'm supposed to go that broad yet, but.
Because we had mentioned that.
We're gonna start with.
Recommend. Yeah, because the forest was free.
I mean,
TPAs.
How about you? I hear Santa Ana.
So that's the point.
Okay.
So
would that be a must have?
different things. So you're gonna have teacher education.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let's write down consistent.
You know, I
Third of the members.
talked about bias.
Person that will
Evaluation.
that's interesting.
I would just say it has to be.
It's interesting.
It can't be. Yes. And then I'm gonna say, if time is question, I'm gonna just provide.
So what is the modification for the assessment?
This was about,
I think.
must the TPAs have to,
What does the law require? The TPA.
The assessment, right?
Say the obvious. Well, actually,
Avoid duplicating work from candidates, right? And then just suggested questions for program completers.
We understand the
Supports recommendations to strengthen accreditation system as it stands right now, like in.
There's now standard 7
And then recommendations for how programs can engage in local scoring of the assessment.
You could highlight if you want.
Yeah, the program.
So those are the 5 different things that were really called out as like what we're doing. And then does that make sense? So like on the very front page. So that's what I read. I was like, why they because the code is what the TPA code was years and years ago. And then they added the underlying sections recently and it hasn't been approved.
Because I'm just thinking like we can also
they want to say remember that they improved the performance assessment.
I guess just section.
And they want to make it secondary passing standards. What that means is when somebody doesn't have like a special deviation, if the program has 7 TPEs in a different way.
I would imagine
Program should be able to say if they're in that standard is
our charge, right?
You know what? They actually have evidence that they did it, and this isn't standard deviation.
So
That's
yeah, I know. So do we?
I didn't understand why. Other than just the original pick.
Subsection 1.
Are you okay, John? Synthesizing
Yeah.
a little bit?
So and yeah, I don't know if it's a must.
Uh,
I mean,
So. For the last year, so it's because we have. We don't go
Well,
first. It's the same thing like as a classroom teacher. We don't look at, you look at the cast.
Shall there, that's.
This is not, we're just gonna do test prep for the cast. That's not it, right? Your class is, hey, I'm going to teach you, right, and make you better, very well-rounded, strong global citizens, knowledgeable, and like, you know, that's really what, and the standards can help provide that. Really interesting, some change.
yes, exactly, because then it can come up to, so, for example, I did president is their own thing, so
Yeah.
So, we'll write that down and see.
And that's the bit that
Limit ourselves.
we only know.
Assessment standards, right here, and it's student discipline.
But not all these things.
Cal TPA.
So that they can be used as.
You know, yeah, because my students are. I mean, as far as my experience.
So it's not just that, I'm ready to go back to it. I can't. And we know.
Exactly, exactly.
That's
So
okay.
Yeah, so I'm a senior, it's
A, B,
We end up needing.
these are.
It's already.
Yeah.
That's for.
And I'm curious too, because I was prior.
is what I went through.
I think they're just asking us in general.
It's a different set of skills.
Now on the phone, like, they have like a project.
That's fine. Yeah.
I can't say that.
That's just
Some research has been done that shows that.
Okay.
Candidates are
So there were-
not, are not.
The difference.
I think that's a lot of the reason for shift. I am curious to know.
It should be valid.
Also think there were some apprehension.
Was the
The accreditation system. Courses of.
Yeah, there is.
Not do as well.
Oh, okay.
where it's all like a summit.
So it's reflecting on all
The actual work.
And a fourth one.
Do it.
If you're a full teacher where you're like on the lesson for the first time, grading it.
Also,
I'm trying to remember.
wide range of measures.
All right. Okay, so is there anything else? See, I see two has a lot.
You also need to do this piece of writing.
I like that one.
Instruction for period two.
Who assesses?
You know what I mean? So there's just some interesting. Yeah.
Oh, TPA.
Talking about.
Regarding.
That's outsourced.
Yes, because I wasn't in-house, I've ever been.
Show me with your hand how much more time you need. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you're ready to go. Okay, let's start in 2 minutes. We'll start sharing out.
I see.
I don't know, I doubt I answered your questions, but that's like.
Okay, so this is actually according to. Great. So that's right. So this means that. No, that isn't the case, as I understand it. We look at. So.
You can do it anytime.
So, exactly, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have candidates directly. You haven't.
I think one or two.
Maybe because we've missed
That assessments are valid, authentic.
work over there.
Embedded into
But they take.
information. Program. License a few that
No, it will be unless it's a decision. There shouldn't be an additional assessment. However, the reviews are.
for assessor. Lies for.
So your other coursework?
I thought, yes, I have some. That's why I'm here.
But it's a package.
Satisfactory.
It is, I mean, you get assessed in one.
That it's occurring.
And your essays and.
Yeah, and you're doing.
No, that's what I was gonna tell you.
In whatever it is.
And we do student life. Assessed on that because somebody comes in, one is. Still an assessment. I'm getting this is. It can't be an assessment. I like reading.
The ongoing.
I mean, that's kind of how I felt about this. This might be.
Yeah, so that they may be used as the basis for it.
Yeah.
These to be implemented in a range of settings across the state.
And there are shells.
Yes, but.
I'd like to call the body back to order, please. So I've asked Adam to put the question at the top and then just document in a note format as we go through around the room to share out. I'd like to make this a suggestion. Let's start with Beverly and Jason. And if you will just say 2 things that you notice. And then let's pass it over to Colin and Josh, and then you can add 2 other things that you may have noticed. And we'll just do that until we run out of things we've noticed around the table. Does that sound good? All right, so with that, Jason and Beverly, would you like to start us?
TPA must have validity of content and reliability of scores.
Is it our turn?
you like to count that as one or two things?
Let's be aligned with the CSTP.
Yeah, you stole our one.
So, yeah, because number one, we wanted constant language between the CSTP or TPE. What is it? What are you saying? I think if we could add a sub point to that, if that would be okay. We also pointed out that if this is if this is intended for the public to be a part of, that some way, shape, or form, CSTPs and TPE should be made available for everyone who is participating. And I think our number two was duration or the.
Yeah, where it says it shouldn't be an additional assessment, we weren't quite sure what that actually meant, because I think anybody taking any of them would think of it as an additional assessment in some way. And I think that the embedding piece is absolutely essential, that it's actually embedded in some sort of coursework and probably content-based and all sorts of things like that, if there is.
Kathy and Ben?
It's gotta be formative in nature. It's gotta be authentic to like the teaching practices.
Oh, well, maybe to add on to the formative piece, maybe I was interpreting, or maybe because it's Brent, let me.
$20 bill. It's gotta be feedback.
As part of the formative piece that allows the teacher candidate to improve upon their practices. Another thing I noticed, according to point 2, is that the TPA has to collect background information of teacher candidates, and that information to be, the results of that to be aggregated to share with others.
Can I ask for a point of clarification? I can't find in this document where they're saying formative specifically. Can somebody just quickly say it's right here? One. I gotta read better.
You see it, Brent? All right, so Rebecca and Shayna.
It should inform program improvement. The process, there should be a process to minimize bias. Well then, how about the secondary passing standard? There should be a secondary passing standard.
Yeah, and you've already uplifted number 6, the analyzing possible sources of bias. That's what I wanted to lift as well.
Results will be reported out regularly.
We say broken down by institution, provider.
No, that was a desire, but
Not a
requirement.
Shall be reported so that they would serve as one of the bases for the individual induction plan of the new teacher. I have to come up with one more, huh? Needs to be able to be implemented in the wide range of classroom settings across the state.
Data should be analyzed and support
Programs to use evidence-based strategies.
Slide.
Please repeat that last one.
analyze data to support
programs with low pass rates.
Thank you.
Let me know if we already covered this one. Did we say formative assessment information during the preparation program for use by the candidate? For the purpose of improving the teaching knowledge, skill, and ability of the candidate.
Expert panel to advise the commission with the design, content, administration, and scoring of the assessment. 1/3 of the panel should be classroom teachers.
No private charter. And also shall be consistently applied to candidates in similar preparation programs.
One that I haven't heard yet is the results reported will serve as one basis for the program awarding a credential. Only one piece of it. At this point, anyone around the room, anything not elevated?
Oh, there's a component of assessor training.
Yep, that was it.
Yep.
And the commission is charged with assisting low performers.
Say that one more time.
Commission is charged with assisting low performers.
So that's what they. But specifically says there's no fees to candidates for those supports.
Support, right?
And that's underlined?
Yep.
So that's in 1263, which means it's pending.
As the commission shall implement the performance assessment in a manner that does not increase the number of assessments required for teachers.
They said that was.
Go back to the results one. Just remember. Also through the process of support as part of the accreditation. If you're looking at your accreditation, that people would come in and not just look at the results. They want to see that you're actually supporting the candidates through that process of doing their performance assessment. To support reports and results or something, or the process of doing it, part of the accreditation.
Here, or so you're saying it should be?
I think just adding it to that little piece. That was
Was it in here as a shall?
wasn't it? I thought that's what, maybe not. It's all right. Good. All right.
For clarification again, the formative assessment information shall be reported. What is that formative assessment information? I'm not even sure what that means.
Let's take that, which you just uplifted, and that kind of goes to our third question. And Adam, can we slide up to that and put it in there?
The third question.
The third question is, what do we need to know more?
Oh, yeah. Right.
I feel like that, defining that is probably something we need to.
You repeat this.
The formative assessment information, it was item E3.
Okay.
It encourages alternative methods of assessment, including portfolios. Questions, right?
We're not, but
Can I go back? Sorry to what Colin was saying, because I felt like some of that was in number 8. Examine and revise as necessary the institutional accreditation system pursuant to Article 10 for the purpose of providing strong assurance to teaching candidates that ongoing opportunities are available in each credential program. I'm not sure if that's like what you were getting at though.
sources of bias, any bias, possible source of bias, I think we need to clarify in 3 section. How will it take on that challenge? Tied into validity, I think, from a certain point of view. And it also, I think, relates to the question of how we would systematically evaluate that. I'll just leave it as we need to, I think, unpack. We're gonna get into that. Working group.
Assessment should be congruent with state content and performance standards. Before we move to the next question, I'm curious, is there anything in this statute that is surprising or something you didn't realize was in education code in relationship to the TPA?
I'll say something. As someone who works with pre-educators and new teachers from various different institutions in LA, I did not know that the institutions themselves were being supported. I would see different candidates or different educators from different programs, and they had a very different experience with the TPA. It was very easy, and others, it was sort of a question mark, and they were still struggling to get through it. So I was not aware that data was being kept for the purposes more than just to keep it, but to use it and implement it with the institutions that were not fulfilling the needs of their students.
Also in that same section, it says there will be no fees to candidates for those instructional supports. I'll say I want a refund from my university.
I was not aware of the fact that there was encouragement to use alternative assessment methods, including portfolios, that there are other options. Anyone use that take that encouragement?
There's a lot of opportunity for data, for analytics of data to help inform program improvement, which is described here, and I work with to really improving their programs, taking this data.
All right, with that, let's move to question number 2. So this time I want us to just take a moment and think, what are we actually being asked to do? So now that we've reviewed the ed code, what is it that you believe that we are being asked to do as a work group, as an outcome? So let's lean on those table partners again, and take 5 minutes and just answer the question, what's their job?
I understand. Correct me. You stop.
No, and I felt like
Just making sure everyone knows it's page 1.
here.
Page 1.
See.
I think we have a conversation about like job.
That's the
Second, it's really
And I think
Just for a point of clarification, I apologize. I sent you to your table partners without making sure everyone knew where it was. So the front page of that same document gives the charge information, and then if you look at the back, 44320.4 is the new, so everything that's underlined is coming from SB 1263. So this would be the language that would be adopted with the charge for the work group. Does that make sense? So your resources are the first page and then the third and fourth pages.
Also, if it's A, it's charged to the work.
Yep.
How we're gonna talk about it's Talk Like a Pirate Day, which is actually what today is.
That's certainly what we did.
I left. Just gotta keep.
That's my job. And we have less.
Whereas.
No one till just.
And so my little side question is to your point of the
Talking about the bag.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what like if someone candidates because people to catch them.
Formative in the sense that.
And I've heard that in different cases. One was
Freeze all the way through.
Specifically because.
Yeah, well, I guess.
It is formative with me in the classroom.
Which means she has to score. I like so interesting for continuity.
Yeah, that's what, if not, we're gonna go back to that. It isn't right.
All things in the spring, you're actually hard.
She's the
That's
but she has a score.
According to the scorer.
And in the last couple of years, as we think about how we preserve this process that has to be consistent for.
What if we're trying to get settled?
Well, I mean, we've got the secondary. You know about that?
Yes, yeah.
So like.
LA alone would be huge.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's only been 2 years.
Actually, no, like you don't know who thinks they can just. It's such a terrible reference. I'm so sorry. I'm in this profession for 2 months. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's interesting. And like you were just talking about AI. So teacher tools, I have risk of life.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
but I've never used it, but I haven't.
So, yeah.
But I've been in it like this.
All right, I'd like to call us back to order. if we can, I mean, obviously we can all read the charges here. But what I'd like you to offer up is something that maybe is surprising to you, or you consider the most important or the most valuable charge, or something that you're particularly interested in. And why don't we elevate it that way? And we'll go the opposite direction. So Linda, will you start us?
Sure. So I'm reading through the our purpose, and our purpose just sounds very convoluted to me. So I guess I'm just going to get straight to the point and just ask. In order for the reason why we're all here is to revise the TPA. So if we're revising something, I'm assuming, not my positive intent, I'm assuming that there's concerns about the current one. So I would like to know, what are the current issues with the current one? What are the gaps? What are the concerns that the current TPA is not addressing, and what is it that we need to do to address it, to improve it? So I want to know what the issue is. And then I also have questions regarding so when I was presented with the possibility of being on this team, again, I was coming from the dyslexia organization, and it was addressed that, the RICA is going away. And so this group was created, again, our perspective, to address the fact that the RICA is going away and we need teachers who can teach reading. How do we incorporate that into the ed TPAs to not, what we just talked about, add more tests to teachers? And so I guess that's my question, is this also in response to the RICA being going away? Is it in response also to the low passing rate of the ed TPAs? Is this why we're here, so that we can make sure that we have a better passing rate? Is it the teacher shortage in California that we're experiencing because they can't pass the ed TPAs? We don't have teachers in the classroom. And then we talked about the bias, do we have issues with the passing rates of teachers of different backgrounds? So I guess that's what I want to know, what are we improving on? Where are the gaps? What are the issues, and what are we addressing? Because we can always make things better. I mean, I can print this on pink paper and make it better, but what are we really making better?
So if I may. So for the first piece is the output of this work group is recommendations to the commission. The recommendations that we send forward can be adopted by the commission or not adopted by the commission. So just to kind of be very clear about what the output of it is. The idea is that what is adopted by the commission from this could inform work plans that would then start to act on the things that are under discussion. This is a separate, but somewhat related, but separate from Senate Bill 488 and the RICA going away. So that's Senate Bill 488, and the requirements are in Senate Bill 48. RICA going away, that is part of the work that Amy and her team are doing to revise Cal TPA. It's part of the work Fresno State is doing to pilot their assessment that at TPA is to update their performance assessments to account for those standards. So that's kind of a separate thing, a little bit. But what I think is really, really, really wonderful is these questions tomorrow, because I heard a lot of we need to, where's the bias? We need to understand this. The whole point of tomorrow, when this is just a teaser, you're gonna take these lines here, it's called establishing lines of inquiry. And so you're gonna develop these questions and the sources of data, if they exist, that you need to see in order to make recommendations. And so we're just sort of sink it in. I mean, and tomorrow is when we generate those questions, and then staff will turn around the resources. And then the next meeting we come and we're focused on the instrument itself. But then we're gonna look at the broader picture of this instrument doesn't live in isolation, it lives within a system of accreditation. It lives within kind of an ecosystem. So what does that all look like? And then the recommendations touch all of it, including, one of the last ones we'll do is, how might we improve innovation? Use local scoring. Or are we asking the right questions of candidates? Which really gets to this data piece that you're elevating. So just wanted to share some of those thoughts and also encourage the whole body to really be in question mode at this point. right? To really give us our marching orders. Tell us what you need us to go get for you to deliberate upon. Helpful.
Like you said, we'll learn more tomorrow.
Sure. So one of the things that we discussed as what is being asked to us as a work group is developing a scaffolded support of TPAs or TPEs to get our candidates to the CSTP proficient advanced level. Exactly, but developing a scaffolded approach for novice teachers or beginning teachers.
Something that I picked up on that is exciting to me is thinking about how the assessments contribute to program improvement through the accreditation system. How they're embedded within our accreditation systems.
I just kind of wanted to speak to your question because it is a good one and just so when working on the design team to redesign the TPA, so there are a lot of questions that came up, and then when the politics that was kind of going on simultaneously, and because we were redesigning to take the place of the RECA and then embed all of the new information, the new standards from SB 488. And during that time, the question came up and another bill came up as to whether or not we even need to have a TPA at all. And so then people kind of backed up a little bit, I think, and then the discussion became a more open-ended question about, well, not only are we redesigning this TPA, not only are we incorporating these new standards and, recognizing a lot of the issues, the biases, the inequitable distribution in terms of people having certain classrooms to do their TPA in and others don't have that access. And so all of those questions, all those things that you mentioned kind of came up and people started to say, well, the new bill came out to say, hey, we need to back up and we need to look at TPAs, period. And so I think, for this work group, the way I looked at it was that this was a very open-ended, this was not necessarily directed at, a specific issue in the TPA so much as all of it. So we may find that, the current TPA with a little bit of tweaks can meet all the issues, which would be one of our suggestions. Or if we find that somehow or another, TPAs are not able to be implemented with fidelity the way whoever thinks that, the way we figure it, then that would also possibly be a suggestion. So it's like it's a really open-ended thing. And all of those things, all of those issues that you mentioned, that was part of the reason for this group. Hope that helps a little bit. Because it was, it's all like in the context of, what the work that was going on, and then the Senate bills as they came up, as they were revised. So I just wanted to kind of add that.
And I think it's important for us to recognize that, the TPAs were developed a while back, and we have new literacy standards that really address the issues that are being raised right now, as well as we have new CSTPs. So really, I think it's an opportune time for us to come together and examine the work of the TPAs and update it. And what that's going to look like, I don't know, but I'm excited to be here with you to help figure it out.
So I think one of the charges that we see here, and I'm just curious, are the topics for consideration at the top of this document kind of a way to synthesize what we may have read in the back of the document to pull out themes that could be of interest to us?
So the logic here is, Madam Chair, if I may. So we have this because of the timelines in Senate Bill 1263, which is not yet signed. In order to get to recommendations by February, we couldn't start in January. So we had to get, we got our marching orders from the commission in the form of the charge that aligned explicitly to what is expected in Senate Bill 1263 so that we can start and that our progress once January 1st hits, that we are well aligned with the requirements that are going to come through. So when you see those two and you see that alignment there, that's the intent behind that.
So I only ask because I think you're suggesting then that as we're working today together, we could add a number 6 if we wanted to the first 5 that I see here in terms of topics for consideration? Or are we working within already that alignment process, where we're sort of understanding that we need to be moving to lines of inquiry fairly soon, the focus concepts? I'm trying to link up the documents in a way so that I can see the stream and not resist it, flow into it. But I just want to make sure, are you letting us know that really we do have sort of a clear set of aligned priorities here?
Yeah, so the topics that at minimum, language in 1263 need to be covered are the topics that are listed, numbered in the charge, as well as 44320.4. So any recommendations that go forward to the commission should address all of those areas, but you are not limited to only those areas. It's the open-ended part.
But throw this out there, it's just something that makes me a little uncomfortable thinking ahead. I know our charge is primarily to, I mean, we have this excellent group of specialists and experts in our field. We go through this process, we make these recommendations. Just that lingering possibility that the commission will not accept or not adopt these makes me uncomfortable. And so just kind of curious as to often does that possibility come to
Okay, I think that one is above my pay grade. So up to executive director.
Well, if we want to work right, it's rare, but no, I mean, it's, I remember there was the last statutory work group like this that I worked with was the Senate Bill 1422 work group that at least one other member of this table participated in. And that review was all of the requirements for earning and renewing a multiple or single subject teaching credential. And that report recommended more than one performance assessment. So performance assessment in preliminary preparation and a performance assessment after induction. It recommended the creation of a middle school's credential, as a separate credential that focused on the middle schools. It recommended, there were several other areas of recommendation. That group was looking at what should the system look like. It was big. They met, 18 times in 21 months. You guys get 8 meetings in 10 months. So, but look, smaller scope. Commission didn't go with, let's get a second performance assessment. Let's not do 2. Let's do 1. If we're going to do 1, where should we locate it? At the point of entry, and let induction be the place where people have the opportunity to develop. So they rejected that. Middle grades credential, they rejected that. I think there was another professional, something about, I can't remember it. Anyway, there's a rabbit hole. We're not going down that rabbit hole. All I can say is that, yeah, the commission will definitely take very seriously all of the recommendations that you put forward. And part of the analysis I think they will need to do is, and that we will assist in, is what are some short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations here? How do we put that into some kind of logical order? And develop, and what's the feasibility for doing some of these things? If you recommend, for instance, well, I mean, let me not even go down that rabbit hole either. So the staff work here is to, work with you iteratively through each meeting, where each meeting ends with some set of preliminary recommendations that you review at the next meeting. And so it's iterative till the end. You have 5 meetings, of which this is 1, before we put preliminary recommendations in front of the commission in February of 2025 to meet the March 1 deadline. You may not have covered all 5 of the areas that you're asked to cover by then, but where you're at, to the commission, and the commission will then have an opportunity for a deep discussion and the opportunity to ask you questions or to provide feedback. So the next meeting we have scheduled for you is the February commission meeting, where we debrief. What did this public outing with this work look like? How does that inform where we are with these things? What adjustments do we want to make? We'll bring it back to the commission at their April commission meeting. Ideally then with a full set of draft recommendations from you that cover all 5 and any other areas that you want to bring forward. And you'll have another opportunity to hear feedback, and one last opportunity then to say, is this our final set? and present them for, recommended adoption to the commission in June. And along the way, we, meaning primarily him, will be working on what would it take for the commission to implement all these things. We'll be working on, for June or subsequent to June. The commission shouldn't take action if it doesn't understand what the impact is in terms of cost, timeline, staff resources, larger ecosystem impacts. So that's got to be part of the discussion, and that will inform what they decide to move forward with and not. Does that help?
No, that helps.
And-
And I just
Sure,
want to
would you
clarify,
disagree?
I didn't throw that out there to suggest that I'm not going to contribute 100%. So I'm still giving my one
Just
little
needed to
self.
know his
I just wanted to
effort.
voice that comfort.
It's appropriate and necessary, and don't ever stop doing it.
Can I go back to that previous slide where we were asked to sort of add a possible guiding question? So again, was it 2? Yeah, there was. How will we distinguish between the formative, then we're typing, interim, and summative, as you put it, nature of the TPA? How will we distinguish between the formative, interim, and summative nature of the TPA? Implicit in this document is the presumption that formative in nature is a goal, a recommendation, a possible finding. But actually, this is a summative. Now, some might want to treat it as an interim assessment where you could figure out ways to find time in between the day you begin to the day you end. So I think we should keep that in mind about purposes and nature, and possibly even really our recommendations be guided by what we can and can't do given those answers to those questions. Resource questions, but I also think there's just simply straight up, like, what are instruments used for to make judgments about people? Sorry, that was the psychometrician part of my head. Or psychomagician, as some people prefer to call it.
And also in here, is there anywhere where it's specifically defined what a beginning teacher is, how many years they've been in? Is it someone exactly out of a credential program? Is it someone who's been in the classroom 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How is beginning teacher defined?
For the TPA, I believe it's just defined as person entering practice. Yeah, credential can't, leaving your program.
And I think that's clear because some of the questions in the actual TPA may be considered too advanced for a beginning teacher, and things that beginning teachers will not be able to do or demonstrate. So
that's where the design team really struggles with exactly. And some of these things you have to decide, well, is this something that is best left in the auspices of a program and not on a TPA? Because of, that whole progression of somebody's development as a teacher.
Follow-up question for him. Just put your finger on something that is about design and implementation of TPAs, Devin. And I think one of the things we're going to get to tomorrow, we're probably going to preview that shortly, is what would you need to know in order to examine that question? What kind of information would you need to look at in order to examine that question? Is this too hard for a beginning teacher or not? That's something to think about overnight. Yeah. Just preview.
Yes, so, yeah, as I was thinking about this, the input, I was thinking of building off of what Kathy and Devin were thinking about. I was thinking about, we're here, I kind of, I heard possible strengths, with what Kathy was talking about. What are, well, at least that's what I took away from what you guys said. What are, there might be possible strengths in spaces of the assessment. What are they? In addition to like what you were saying around uplifting bias and whatnot, but really getting, for me personally, I'm thinking about how I'm getting curious about what are the strengths that I see in
assessments that are valid, authentic, formative, preparation, and contribute to program improvement. So what strengths can I take away from these conversations? Also be a learner in this space. I mean, teacher, learner, learning, and also what Devin said, just uplifting the fact that we have an opportunity to express the voices of people that we work with, and just what a great responsibility that is, and also it is a responsibility. So like Devin, I'm all in. I'm in for this work. So I think that's what I'm thinking about right now, and we're being asked to do as a work group. Bigger, on a larger scale, not so much detail.
Well, what I'm thinking about, what we're being asked to do right now, it's kind of related to that too. So I'm thinking about, what do we need to know about teachers and what they can do and where they're at? And I'm thinking about, okay, well, that's where I come in. It's like, oh, this development piece. It's like, I know some of that, and I'm interested in looking at the TPA through that lens, and really taking a close look and thinking about, is this, how does this line up with development, and what can we do? Can we do that? So I'm excited to look at that together.
We had a little conversation about the idea of local scoring and what the consequences, positive and negative, might be, and steps we might need to to make sure that we're calibrating across the state, so we can maintain a standard for educators across the state while still providing local assessment feedback. Balance of the two.
Tricia and Matt.
I think Kevin brought up a good point. That's just like teachers' provisions and just making sure that it's working. But one thing I took away from here was just being authentic. I think just being authentic, for especially being a teacher out in the field. You do, sometimes they walk into the classroom, they need administration, they want to see certain things, or they want to see you do certain things. Sometimes it's really hard to do because that's not what you're doing right now. And so I think just part of, going through the national board process too was like every moment's a teachable moment. Find these things to make it, but it's just now having that creativity. And I think teachers go sometimes through these programs, do this, and this. And again, adult learning theory, they want to be told sometimes what to do, because if you tell me what to do, I do it right, and then you leave me alone, right? So anyway, that's what I was kind of thinking, just going back to that authentic piece, and just going through that teachers have that capability and know that they can be creative with their lessons. And coming from Central Valley, like we're just so far away from South, we're so far away from North. How do we meet our student population?
Lots, but I mean, I guess what I'm hearing from all of this is there's lots of various tensions that are going on, and I think that if you weren't already aware of this coming in, this work that we're being asked to do is complex. So I hope that, and maybe this might want to be a norm, I hope we don't get attracted to easy in all of this work, because I think we can do hard things if we put our minds and our energy towards that. Speaking of norms, I just want to say I appreciate many of you who are speaking your truth. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm hearing lots of people realize the norms that we're doing, and also want to appreciate you for letting us kind of go off track a little bit. I don't know what slide we're supposed to be on, but you can your power if you wanted to, but if not, you're letting us have this opportunity to kind of talk things through. So thank you for that.
So I actually thought about saying this before when we were wrapping up the other thing, and you were like, oh, any like ahas or surprises, right? And I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as a surprise because I've gotten to see the ed code and I've seen it change, and I'm been in education long enough. I've seen ed code change and understand the different iterations. It's just interesting because sometimes looking at the ed code, certain things juxtaposed against each other seem like they're very much so at odds with each other, right? The initial call out with like CSTPs, which now we have the TPEs, but now the CSTPs are changing and you got TPE 7, which is right, like, so all of a sudden it's like we're directing work to a moving target that might take 6 years to catch up with TPEs, right? And there's something changing potentially next year with the CSTPs. So there's that. And then there's also the whole idea of formative. Brent called this out. I marked that paragraph interesting about formative assessment just because, like, from a program side, if we're being measured by how students perform on this assessment, just like on a CASP, right? Students are being measured. And so, like, this is the measurement of how our school's performing. That is no longer a formative in nature. And so then I think it just creates a lot of questions. Maybe it's the iterations of change, right? You could see that it was implemented originally as like a, hey, let's do this really cool formative assessment. That's how students grow, right? Through formative assessment and feedback. And it's kind of transformed potentially over different bureaucratic ed code changes that all of a sudden now it became summative and it became, so it's just, to me, it's that complex work that he was just talking about. Because as iterations have created changes, it kind of feels like some of the ideas have to be boxed in if we follow this as it sits.
And even if we create something new, we're gonna face that challenge.
That's what I mean to say, right? Because the ed code is going to dictate the work, that it has to dictate the work. So with that in mind, it just feels like several parts of the work are actually at odds with each other, where I could see and understand why there's been some difficulty in adjusting TPAs, if that makes sense. Sorry, and yeah.
Have anything to add?
We talked about, everyone talked about validity and being supportive and being locally based, and an offshoot of that conversation, because we were talking about kind of humanizing the process that can be, not necessarily, but can sometimes feel bureaucratic, is there isn't a mention, and I looked a couple of times, but you please correct me if I'm wrong, of ensuring and possibly sustaining, and so this might actually be for the next slide. Sorry. The actual participants and scores, when we think about local scoring and valid scoring, are human. And are we moving towards any kind of language that will ensure that actual educators support and score actual educators, right? Because that language isn't explicit anywhere. And for the formative or summative assessments, and just trying to be futurist, because this is not for us this year, it's for educators in the future. How are we setting them up to be supported in an authentic that limits bureaucracy, but also it's humanity of the process? Because I think it will be very easy and tempting to run a lot of these numbers through tech and score a lot of these things with tech. And that's where tech is going right now in terms of assessments and scoring. I don't know if we're taking up that gauntlet here, but it's not explicitly mentioned anywhere. That feels funny.
I think especially because we're in this moment in time with AI and all of that. I just so appreciate that you raised that.
I gotta say,
Because
I think it's not just about how institutions will manipulate data analytics, and we're seeing it in our own university settings right now. And things are being promoted as formative that aren't formative. But what's more disturbing to me is that a candidate has every incentive now to run most of their written work through an AI algorithm to improve the level, subject, content. And those systems are feeding on large language models, which increasingly, I don't really know where these texts sit. So I don't know if they are held behind the wall behind Pearson. Sorry, that's the one who's implementing our process right now. And all I'm saying is, I'm just curious how much that material gets out and then gets modeled and then gets turned into something very scary around what is authentic assessment.
And then it's complicated by the institutions, right? Because I might have a different expectations for the candidates in my program at my institution than he has at his for the use of AI. So we also need to consider.
And that is missing from the statute, which is fascinating too, because I think, at least I didn't see it in the statute.
What's missing?
Any concern, thoughts, or addressing with the tech revolution
Or
right now?
saying something to the effect of what she mentioned, which is humanizing the process and ensuring that educators are scoring the work of incoming educators. With something to that effect, I thought you said.
I don't think the tech revolution was anticipated at this level in 1997.
But now that it's here, it's important.
It's here. It's a good point. Good point.
If you think of the first bullet or the first point broadly enough, there are some modifications for the TPA. I think that fits within that. But I don't think we're out of the realm of considering.
Can I add maybe one question? Yeah. So I really liked when Linda started talking about like purpose, like, right? I put on like my my hat as someone who wants to get the work done properly, right? And I come to purpose. And so I guess my question is, what is the current purpose of the TPA? Because there's a lot of things wrapped into it, from accreditation to providing credentials to, and so it would be interesting for just like to hear, like, what are the priorities? Like, is this the first one? Is it about credentialing? Is it about accreditation? Is it, where should our focuses be if we were gonna like prioritize the work?
I guess I could just say for, people designing it or trying to rework it with all of these things that, we're considering, the background would be, we want to make sure that a candidate is not being disserviced by their program and they are fully prepared for the situation that they're going into. That's,
to me, that's
what, that's our,
my heart.
and I can just, I'm not gonna speak for everybody on the design team, but we all pretty much have that disposition, I would say. That being said, yes, we do have the legal other issues, the politics that kind of go into it. But I would say that it's definitely the driving force is definitely to make sure all candidates are prepared to teach all the children that we have in all of our schools.
In California.
Yes.
Yes.
Learners and
Yes,
everything else.
which is, that's the complexity. I mean, if, being in a special ed classroom, I mean, just think about the complexities of making sure you have the right focus students to see, or even how, access to a classroom where there's a teacher that's going to actually let you look at that IEP. Right?
And I think to your point, if that is the driving force, that really needs to be the focus of our work.
Right. And can that happen? And I appreciate that somebody came back and said, look, our TPA is really the way to go. Maybe this work needs to live in the program. And that could be okay. And I think, the hard part, is making sure that when we're coming here, that open-mindedness is there, because it's a big, complicated thing.
When I initially read the first purpose, I kind of in my brain separated design and implementation. And so really thinking about the design of the TPAs and what that actually looks like for students. And then thinking about separately, how do we implement this to be effective and then mesh together? I think that's kind of summarizing what you're saying.
Add something to what you just said as well. I mean, luckily, being at Stanford, I was working with Linda, and when people ask this question to her, why are you doing this to us? Literally, why are you doing this to us? And without her starting this, we wouldn't be where we are today. And she was able to turn around and say exactly what you said to the students, to make sure that you can teach every single kid in the state of California. And that's why we do this, because it's checking that you can do that for every single kid that you teach.
And that you feel that agency and that you're ready, so you don't quit after a year. you know?
But you can't do that your first year of teaching, so the TPAs is just,
Well-
you're supposed to get their.
But see, that's and that's a great question of who is defined what the beginning teacher looks like.
Is it the one
Is
at
it
the
the
lowest
that
end,
part?
or the
That's-
one in the middle, or the
Right.
advanced one?
And how do we take it and keep it formative, right? As opposed to, oh, well, if you're not ready, then you can't go into the
Exactly,
classroom.
that
How do you
part.
shift that?
That part.
And
formative for the institutions too.
And
That
are we
part.
willing to be bold enough to say, not everyone who aspires to be a teacher is a teacher. It's a difficult job, right? And it requires a high level of skill and ability.
But it shouldn't be set at the very last test that you take before you get your credential.
That part, that part. That's the formative summative.
Program.
Yeah,
Where
and
all of
that's-
a sudden,
And that's not how we approach it where I work and I oversee the programs. We don't approach it from that standpoint. It goes along, so it's more formative in our program, but I understand that that's not.
like what you said about the future teacher comment, because I would like to see the data of teachers who pass the STPs and how successful they are after a year of teaching, after 2 years of teaching, after 5 years of teaching, because on the other side, I stepped out of the classroom, you know, as part of the team that with my administrators, and we had 6 new teachers on campus and we non-reelected 3. And it's a hard decision to make, and I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision, but I was part of the team that observed and made suggestions. But I remember my principal and assistant principal look at me and going, Linda, what is going on with the teaching programs? Like, why are we getting these teachers? Like, WTF, like, honestly, was what they were looking at me, because we had teachers that they passed the TPAs, they had these master's degrees, and they had the golden heart, like best intentions in the world, but I teach in Watts. I teach in a neighborhood that's interesting. And we need teachers who can teach our students and successfully teach our students. So when you say you can teach any student in California, I'm going to smile and cringe and say, can't we? Because I've been teaching for over 20 years. And, you know, I went from teaching in East LA to teaching in Watts. I can walk probably in a classroom in Irvine and be okay. But going from East LA to Watts, even 10 miles down the street, it's a whole different dynamic. And I struggled as a teacher. And I struggled to mentor teachers to be successful and to understand what it means to be successful in a classroom in Watts with the demographics that and the struggles that we work with in that classroom. So I think it's really hard. And that's why I want to see the data, like what and the goal, what is our EdTPs? Do we want teachers to get through and maybe just give them that opportunity? You know, like, I love that you counsel teachers. I would love to counsel half these teachers out of teaching before they got their credentials, before they got their master's degree.
That is supposed to be part of the responsibility of an institution based on dispositions and multiple measures. If somebody is coming into the field that you know is not good for kids, that is the moral obligation of the institutions. And that's part of the accreditation process, is monitoring that. And so I hear what you're saying and I feel your heart. Thank you for sharing your lived experiences.
Yeah, because we really, you know, the other thing is like you're saying, is like we're trying to give them the tools, we're giving them, you know, what they need to get started on that journey. Because, you know, I remember when I first started out teaching, I'm not the same now, you know, for sure. And so in recognizing that every candidate comes with different things that they bring that are, you know, positives, you know, that are attributes, that are strengths that they can use. But how do programs turn all of those attributes and those strengths into the things that are needed for them to get on that journey? You know, inquiry, you know, how do we teach them to look at data? How do we teach them that they need to look at data? You know,
I
those,
feel like
you know
our
what I mean?
framework is good, right? We do I forget what it is, but it's like, you know, plan, do, act, reflect.
Yeah.
I think that's good. But what we're doing within that, given that there's new literacy standards and new CSTPs, I think we need to consider.
Are we gonna use Robert rules when we start doing a lot of crosstalking?
We were just discussing that we should probably use a stack, but what I'd like to do is actually finish around the room.
Absolutely, and I'll wait to the end only because I see an item that you handed out to us that we haven't covered, so I'll wait until we're done.
Great. So let's return back to Josh.
Thank you. I'd like to just add, I heard skill and all this kind of stuff, and nobody mentioned patience. You need the level of patience that a teacher needs to succeed through the first year or through the 5th year, where they all seem to fall out. This is something that it's going to be hard for teacher preparation programs to monitor or to assess to see if you have what it takes. Because it does take skill, it does take content knowledge. You have to know how to teach and engage, but you also have to be very patient to teach every California. I think the other thing I will go back with Benjamin and Brent on the formative. I was actually, as a classroom teacher, going to my high school, not my lecturer work, is that when I saw formative in nature, I was fascinated with that because formative in nature as a classroom teacher is I have the ability to reteach right away. I know you in the exact real time. You do not know this, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to reteach. The TPA is not formative in nature. I think there might be a disconnect then between the commission and teaching preparation programs and candidates if we all feel this is a formative process. This is not a formative process. This is a process, speaking from someone who went through the TPA process, it's a hurdle. Like Colin and I were talking, it is the final hurdle to get over so you are just waiting. What did I get? What score did I get? What score did I get? So I can go to the next one because it's holding me back from something that I've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, blood, sweat, and tears in. And that is the definition of summative. That is not, I'm going back to reteach myself this or someone's going to reteach me this. So I'm fascinated to find out in our work ahead of us how we're actually going to make the TPA process formative, truly formative, real-time formative in nature.
Spoken too much already. The thing that struck me about it is I think that someone mentioned earlier that there's already been conversations about whether we should have one and whether one should exist at all, and then back to let's have a working group to decide that. That isn't really in our description here. It talks about evaluating and then modifying the current teaching performance assessments. I just wonder whether it's sort of really what Debbie was saying. If there is a significant number of people that have already decided that this is not good for California, then we're not wasting our time, because I agree with you that we need to be doing this work. It's important. But is that really part of it? Is it just modifications? Because modifications don't mean getting rid of, in my view. The only other bit that I would think about is that I think that we need to probably talk a little bit about is our work is what makes it educative process of I think we're using formative and we talk about it a lot, and whether it's summative or formative, or whether I've got time depending in the year whether to learn from it, whether I get any feedback from the organization I've just submitted it to, how useful is it, all of that is part of the formative. But I know my students very often say I hate it. It's an awful process, but I learned a lot from doing it. It really did educate me about thinking about my students more deeply than any of the actual courses or the other things that we're doing. It forced me into doing an educative process. And I think that maybe we need to be adding to our work what makes it educative.
I think I have 4 points, but they've been shaped by listening to everybody, so maybe I have 4 points. When it started, Linda, we were asked, what is it we're asked to do? What's our charge? And Linda, one of the first things you said was revising the TPA. And I would just push back because I don't think that's in our charge at all. The TPA there's 3 TPAs owned by various institutions, whatever. And I think our charge, as I read it, was to evaluate how it's being implemented, how it was designed, and if it's meeting its purposes. And if it is, we say hooray. And if it's not, we recommend that it be revised. in maybe specific ways, maybe in general ways, but then it would go back to the commission and it would go to the three owners of the three models of TPA. They would revise it. Because we certainly are not the group to actually revise the TPA. The question about where it takes place, I have always thought as a former teacher ed faculty member, as the completion of a program, teacher ed faculty also often see themselves, and I think districts look to programs as a gatekeeper to the profession of making sure that only the people who are well-educated and knowledgeable and skilled and have the emotional makeup and the patience are entering the profession. And so to me, at the completion of a program is the right place for it because it is a gatekeeper. And I think good programs do what Ursula talked about is embedding all of the tasks of the TPA throughout the year of the program or the 2 years of the program, so that when you get to the end and you have that final thing, it's not just a one-shot thing. It has been shaped all the way through your program. And so I think that's the right place. In terms of it being formative, I agree that it's such a high stakes assessment that it doesn't feel formative, but its intent, and it's still in the law, was that the results of the TPA inform the plan for induction. That it is formative, that a beginning teacher, as they leave preparation, then they start induction, which back in the day was meant to be supportive and to help them refine their practice and encourage them to stay in the profession, that it would be built on, here's what were your challenges that the TPA showed. So in induction, let's work on those things. And so it was meant to be formative. The fact that it's gotten away with that, big things that we should look at is how can it be more formative? That yes, it's a basis for a credential decision, which is high stakes. But telling an individual that they're licensed to go with children, also high stakes. And so I think it should be high stakes. And it's stressful because you all know teaching's not an easy profession. And you gotta be able to deal with stress and deal with these qualities and knowledges and skills that we think teachers have. So I think that was 3. Number 4, which was not in our charge, but what I think would be a great area for us to look at in terms of recommendations is if we evaluate this whole design and implementation and we find that the current models, 3 models, are lacking in some way, that we also consider and make recommendations about the commission designed performance assessment standards, that things that are used to approve these 3 models. Because maybe if our 3 models aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, maybe those standards should be tweaked in some way so that the TPA, the Cal TPA, and FAST have to adjust to a different standard, a higher standard, a changed standard. But I would like the approval standards for the instrument themselves to be included in our test. I think that was 4. Yeah. All 3 of those, when a program like Fresno, God bless them, putting out their own TPA. That was a huge amount of work that no other institution in the state was willing to do. They had to put it forward, and just like when a teacher ed program stands to be accredited and they have to meet accreditation standards, the TPA had to be accredited and meet those standards. So I think we should look at those too. If there's an issue with TPA, we should look at the standards that approve them.
That's my partner. As I'm reading, I just see all these kind of qualitative goals for our charge: valid, authentic to the work of a teacher, reasonable, appropriate, strengthened, and sufficient. And so for our charge, I felt that if we have all of these kind of qualifiers, we either have to establish the criteria that constitutes all of this. So like, yeah, it's strengthened. How do we know that? How do we know it's valid, authentic to the work? If we're not being provided a rubric in order to objectively measure that, then you're just kind of making these pie in the sky recommendations. Yeah, I think this strengthens it. Oh, I think this is valid, but what are we using to actually measure that this constitutes that criteria? And then along those same lines, I was riveted by all of the discussions, and I felt you, Linda, right? You know, at South Central, Inglewood, Watts, Compton. It's different beasts, you guys, wherever you go. And I feel our early career teachers, when they come in believing they are fully prepared, they have the knowledge and the tools way more than some of our veteran educators, but they don't feel prepared for the classroom management, the administrative bureaucracy, like how do I navigate culture? And so these ideas like fully prepared, we all know that we are one experience, event, or crisis away from realizing that we were not fully prepared. COVID, right? Highly experienced educators, award-winning, like, I don't know how to navigate this. And then boom, I'm not fully prepared anymore. And so just having this idea of like, what's our purpose? I would really love to see educators coming in who are resilient and persistent and savvy so that they stay within the profession, because they have a lot of great tools, but do they know how to navigate the space? And what kept me going my first year, because they put me in my kids, they put me in the most challenging course. I was underprepared, hadn't even fully finished my credentialing program. I was an emergency substitute and for my own class eventually. And one teacher told me, just get through the year. And so then I just kept that in mind. I'm breaking up race riots. That in my TPA, my credentialing program. So those different things, like, why are they leaving? Is it because they didn't do well on the TPA? Because sometimes we do well on TPA. Or is it other things? And I just stuck it out that year, and it did get better. But that teacher coached me. He was only 1 year above me. That teacher coached me in a way to understand how to persist in the profession. And so, you know, sometimes maybe our goals, we want them to be fully prepared, but it's just a lot of experience that they need in order to really get to that level. So being more resilient, savvy, and growth oriented, how do we help candidates do that?
My part.
That is the dynamic duo right there.
One of the questions I just heard Jason ask that we didn't get up there was, why are teachers leaving? I think might be an interesting discussion point related to TPA or not related, right? So I think now we have one last question that we are, and I think we kind of started to address it as we went around. It's just any other questions that you have or information you need to know in order to do the work. So are there questions that you have? And let's not say we have to contribute to this one unless you really have something you'd like to. So I'm going to ask Adam to just create a stack, and we'll just call names as you show interest. And you can do that just by raising your placard.
Tried to use Robert's rules earlier and got my name on that stack. So am I there still?
You are still here, Brent. You're at the top of the stack.
Those forms to practice self-care as I think about what I'm going to say right now, because bit of a reach, but I did want to say I am incredibly invigorated by all of us, because I think we really do bring the passion of practice. Everyone here is committed to practice and more than just gatekeeping. I did see a document that you gave us that said submitted for agenda item 3B, which you don't believe made it. And I was looking on the PowerPoints to see whether 3B was there. So can you clarify for me whether I can speak to 3B or whether we should table that for another?
We tabled 3B, right? It's that letter is so that is public comment. And common practices, when we have a public comment come in, we're gonna photocopy it, we're gonna put it over there. It is also accessible online. When we do the closing comments, we'll take some time to walk through the portal and kind of how you can access all of this. But
I would just add, all of that is absolutely true. Everything he says, absolutely. And if what you're reading in that letter is pertinent to the question of what else, what other questions, what other, if it's pertinent to this item, I think will you allow that?
So, I think part of the charge of being in this work group, as we said, was to represent and or communicate and or go back and forth between our home institution, let's say, as an example, and this work group. I have a letter here that is part of the public comment and comes from what I'm going to take to be a colleague from UC Santa Cruz, my alma mater, so maybe I feel torn to have to actually say something. This particular item expresses deep concerns about the current role of TPA and the way in which it's positioned from this author's point of view. And I want to respect the person who wrote this letter and took this time. So I appreciate the fact that someone who apparently is concerned and may even be a critic of TPA has informed me as a member of this committee or this work group to take seriously the feelings, the concerns, the intellectual realization, the years of experience in the field of teacher education with TPA. And I'm not going to address the substance of the letter. I'm simply going to say that I do think, in addition to thinking about what my own institution thinks, I want to make sure that as a person in this group, I'm listening hard across the state to people who may have concerns. And I think this work group has already shown today that many of the issues raised in this letter are actually going to be brought into our discussions and brought forward, perhaps as recommendations. I don't know that. No one can read the future yet. But we could say that at least we know we have a process for taking seriously not just the group think here, but actually those who are outside of this room today in the public who need their voices heard. And so, again, it was on the table. I'm glad I read it, and I thank you for making this a public meeting that includes more than just our thoughts and recommendations.
Audience and staff.
I mean, I think that's kind of perfect for what I was gonna mention, both for the last question and for this one. I feel like there's some overlap in terms of what I need to understand comes from, I think, what our job is. For me, I came to this as a classroom teacher, and I'm here as a classroom teacher who's supporting a lot of the candidates in their year 1 through 5. Some of them had gone through TPA. They didn't want to think about it. It was something that they did. Their program did a great job. But that's not enough, right? It's like that doesn't automatically make them a great educator. And I think we said that. And so for me, it would be like, can I get some of that data? Can I know the programs that are doing the embedding and the great job? And can I know the demographics of our candidates that are not? I have an idea based on my experience with my student teachers and also my first, year 1 through 5. But that would be important because the question that I come back to is that, like, I've seen great individuals that could have been great classroom teachers leave because they're stressed about this exam. That they feel defines them as an educator. They feel embarrassed that they haven't passed it in their teaching. And my job as a mentor gets hard because they're focused on passing the TPA, and I'm trying to get them to focus on all the other things that they're doing really great at, because some of our great teacher ed programs that embed the TPA, from my experience, lack a lot of the other things that make good educators. And so that, like, hustle and stress is there. And sometimes I'm like, it's unnecessary hustle and stress. You can be a great educator with those relationships that you're building with students because you come from the same community that your students are there, right? And we're not able to assess that, and I'm seeing really young educators struggling to make it to the end of the year because of something that they don't really understand. Like, it's foreign to them. If their program did a great job, great, they checked it off the list. If their program didn't do a great job, they're just now with so much more unnecessary stress, I would say. And that, as someone who did my TPA, I do really well on formative assessments, summative assessments. I'm nationally board certified. And then I would say that it's part of a holistic process. The TPA, I know we all know that, we all believe that, but I would like to know, like, what are the best practices, right, that we're gonna consider? I would like to know what other folks think are best practices for a TPA, because in my experience on the other side, I'm like, I know exactly what institution each of my, new teachers went to based on if they passed it or they didn't. And those demographic data that I have might be different, might be the same. And also the question about access and privilege, right? Those of us who were privileged enough to go to certain institutions, and we have the tuition debt to prove that, have an easier path than my students who are like, I don't have $52,000. I'm gonna go to the state school and I'm gonna wing it. And hopefully the state school is gonna help me out with the lack of resources and that sort of the embedded privileges that exist beyond the TPA for sure. But at the same time, it's like, sometimes I feel like this thing there at the end of their program can be super defeating. And I want to humanize our new educators because some of them do deserve to be there. Some of them should be there. We need it for more than just they pass this assessment, right? It's like our students need to see them in the classroom. So I feel like my questions are like, I need that information so I can do my job, so I can make sure that our great educators can pass that, if that's what we need to do.
I jump in and support the idea that we get info about best practice. That's all. I just, about institutions that are doing it well. I think that would be really informative too.
A similar question is, do we have any data from Pearson or the CTC as a response to or from students who have taken the NTPA, the CalTPA, the FAST, as any a self-reflection or like in beginning to think about this work group, reached out to anybody who has and given some feedback on what their process was like? Kind of alluding back to the letter here, how does the exam affect students' belief about the CTC as an institution supporting them to become teachers? Is there some data that the CTC has conducted or collected, thank you, to help assess success?
And that's real quick is in the one other thing I would ask if we have it is that institutions that are not right fulfilling the needs of the students to be able to pass the TPA, what does that support look like? Resources, I don't know. I have no idea. That was new to me, so I was wondering like if it's possible to understand how institutions are being assisted in being able to meet the TPA passing rate.
So that's part of the underlined, correct? So that's the part that's in 1263 that hasn't yet passed. So it's to come. But yeah.
So could you just repeat?
Reflects experiences and
is it really how our institution is currently being assisted, or is it supported, and how are we holding that?
Last one or so.
It's about support and accountability, I believe, but I'm adding to her words.
How are programs being supported and held accountable?
Can I also
Jason next. And Vanessa.
Oh, I was just saying, do we have candidate reflections on the support that they received? Do we have like qualitative data or interviews or surveys to look at?
Vanessa?
Also Pearson, the assessment, like I'd like to know what their data collection, what their measures are, and how their role kind of fits into, they're a test maker and we're implementing it onto humans. And so how does that kind of affect how it's designed and implemented? Because they are not teachers.
Could you make sure I just captured this right? So is the question, what data does Pearson maintain?
Collect, to reflect candidates'
experiences. Ursula, I couldn't tell, were you?
Good, he's added it, I'm good.
Okay, great. And Brent, did I see yours?
I
Stack is clear.
a while back, but the discussion has since passed on to that. But one thing that I wanted to just uplift and say is that, yeah, like the discourse that we have about students, like I'm really appreciative of the people in the room right now thinking about that in terms of like this discourse that we have about teachers and teachers' ability to continue to learn. And I think that's something I'm not entirely sure yet how that connects to RDI-TPA and this idea of concept of formative piece, right? But that is like what I'm holding from today is like, how do we continue to learn? Because we know that teaching does not just stop after you take the TPA. We're learning about teaching, right? Like 24 years in, I'm still, you know, learn about, you know, how to best support multilingual learners, how to best utilize UDL in the classroom, right? There's always opportunities to learn. So again, I'm really appreciative of this group in the discourse that they're taking around the ways in which teachers continue to learn and this concept. And again, like my background has been peer assistance and review coach. So the concept of like coaching somebody out of the profession of teaching, right? Like that's interesting to think about before they get into the classroom. Because I've seen the other end of that. I've seen the teachers who have been struggling and you know, and not to say necessarily that is something that I would condone or can do. But again, like, you know, that's an interesting, complex question is that disconnect between, you know, what's best for students and, you know, wanting somebody to learn, to continue to learn the profession of teaching. And this, the other thing that I want to uplift was I really appreciated Jason. Jason's uplifted the benefits of coaching and again, like how that, however that interacts within the TPA process. I'm not entirely sure because this is still kind of continuing to learn more about because I'm fairly new within the teacher residency programs. And I just really appreciate the power of a coach and the power of a mentor. I'm just saying that in San Francisco right now, they've got like an embedded coaching with literacy. So where our goals are around third grade literacy, we have 72 literacy coaches, instructional coaches with mentor coaches that are looking up to learn how to facilitate these kind of spaces. But yeah, so like how may that connect also to making a TPA embedded, more formative, authentic. And I just really appreciate Brent for bringing the letter, right? Again, that speaks to the responsibility that we have to not just this work group, but again to like the people that we are coming with, the arts that we bring to this work, and thinking about how to make that more authentic for teachers, which ultimately, you know, impacts students. And that's kind of like the goal that I'm saying within this work group is how to impact students through the window of teachers.
I'll nerd out a little bit more because I am on the supposed group that deals with performance assessment expertise. There's a book called The Standards for Educational and Psychological Testing. I think I probably brought this around in 2017. Anna Marie Francois may remember that. The book is being revised now as we speak, and it's essentially a way for people who make tests to come to terms with what's the evidence that what they're doing makes any sense, and that anyone could agree that their evidence for validity, reliability makes any sense. And I only raise that as for our group, we might want to think about what is the alignment today with current designs, with ongoing validation work in the field for other big performance assessments. We are hardly the only state or the only field with the performance assessment. And so I think we owe it to the state of California as well to just be able to say, yeah, we understand the national standards for this. And we think that there's lines of evidence we need to learn about. I'll give you one concrete one. Consequential validity. What are the consequences of a large scale standardized performance assessment for teachers? And I would even add for cooperating teachers. And I would even add for those instructors in universities and other settings who coach and teach content inside of teacher education programs. My sense of it is there's a lot of unhappy customers, and they're not just the folks taking the TPA. They're not just the candidates. So I'm not suggesting that I know anything about that beyond anecdotal evidence. In fact, I don't know anything besides what I've heard or what I've seen. But it would be nice to know if we can make a recommendation for some study that goes beyond anecdote and just says, look, let's start talking more to other stakeholders. And I understand that there are documents here where we have some information. I just want to put a highlight on that. Maybe a recommendation will be to push past some of the actual findings we have about impacts on users of this particular performance assessment. And it's called consequential validity as a technical term. It's what are the consequences of such an instrument? Gave a hoot about what I just said. I hope all you at least will ask me what I'm talking about still. But it does matter, I think, for us as a body to think about those issues.
I'm afraid I did not capture your question. So it's with current understandings, current looks at, I understand the broader validity.
You've got it right there.
Okay.
The alignment of current TPAs with consequential validity studies. What are some of the other data sources we have on stakeholders other than the TPA candidate? There are plenty of faculty in my building who are running, I think, I didn't say that out loud, this is a public meeting. My impression is, the anecdote is that some people around me are a little tired of TPA because they think it crowds out what they want to teach in language learn development courses, or even in courses on educational psychology and foundations, or even courses that have been named in other ways. So there's impacts not just on candidates, but some people are worried, am I teaching the right stuff? And I think that's also part of the profession. It's not just our teachers. It's the teacher educators. Can they get behind this? And how do we get a better pulse on what they need? One way to do is by studying and asking questions.
We capture, I know early on, people asked what is formative. It's been part of a bunch of conversations. I just want to make sure that's documented.
And to my good friend at Stanford, what is educative? Because I've heard Ray Pichon use that for years. I think we owe it to ourselves to define that one more time.
The educative, we got the formative.
Interim I threw in there as well, because some people would argue this is at best interim when we talk about marking the third or fourth week. How are you going?
The formative, interim, summative.
Could I just, it's another question really. I think I remember some time ago when the documentation around the secondary passing standard, that there was a whole load of information and data which I found very worrying about world languages and the success rate in world languages in EdTPA, and it had all sorts of other pieces of information. I was wondering whether we should be circulating that as part of tomorrow's. It was a document that came out around the passing standards and the fact that you could be 1 or 2 under the bar, 3 or whatever it is that it ended up being under the bar. And as part of that process, they were showing how many world language teachers would have passed if we'd have had that passing standard as a little bit lower. But there are documents for it somewhere. I don't know where.
Probably an agenda item.
It's linked.
It's linked. It's already linked in your resource document.
So it is already linked.
And I'm going to, part of my part for the last item of the day will be to walk you through all those resources that are there to help you prepare for tomorrow. So just previewing that. See, Tina has her hand up.
Did she have her hand up?
That's
That's not a hand.
okay.
Tina Sloan, whose plane never got off the ground in Santa Barbara, is no longer in the lounge at that airport paying attention to this meeting. She's moved to a more comfortable and quiet place. And I think we'll be here tomorrow.
So Colin, you were asking for, I think, a really good question, the subject matter, single subject scoring differences. And then we have a multi-subject component too, right, for the TPAs. So maybe we could see the data on both sets. And I think
It'll all be in there. It's all in the item.
All there. Gotta read.
There's the, for special ed probably as well. The item that Adam will show you the path to.
With that, let's move to item 6A. And then once we do 6A, we can get to 7A where Adam will share all of those resources with us so we can do some homework. 6A is the general public comment. We will now open for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments? The public comment period is now closed. Now we are on to agenda item 7A, which are the closing remarks of representatives from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Candy, would you like to start?
Yes, this is the best pickup game I've had in a long time. And I so appreciate it. I couldn't help myself. I processed by transcribing what you're saying as you're saying it, and I didn't catch it word for word, but so much richness in the discussion thus far. And I was particularly taken by a comment that you made, Matt. Said, I hope we don't get attracted to easy hard things. Amen, brother. Yeah. I think that what we've done with 44320.2, Commission has attempted to do with 44320.2 since 1997, when we got the report of recommendations from that work group, put forward a bill in 1998. Has been one of the hardest things a licensing agency could do. It's so much easier to get people to pass a multiple choice test. I mean, that is fast scoring, cheap material. It just doesn't tell you anything. And it rarely, unless it's extraordinarily well constructed, teaches anybody anything about anything that's important. It's a simple barrier, that's sometimes a very high hurdle. And we are in the state moving away from those high hurdles. Thankfully, there have been many changes legislatively to reduce the impact of standardized multiple choice tests. And the RICA, which has been a major barrier for years for some candidates, has been, 3-4, and Senate Bill 488 was slated to become embedded in teaching performance assessments because at the time the view was performance assessment is educating. And it is undertaken by preparation faculty in program, in clinical practice, much closer to where the teaching and learning is happening, therefore a better place to assess somebody's readiness to teach reading. But I so appreciate your comments, Josh, about what seems like contradictory elements in that bill. Formative, summative, informative about a candidate getting recommended for a credential, and informative about a candidate moving into induction. These are, so forgive me if this sounds like an apologetic. It's not intended to be that. I see these things living in a very dynamic tension and setting a target that is a hard target to hit, which makes it critically important that we reflect on our progress, we reflect on our impact, and we respond accordingly. As an agency that's responsible for implementing this policy, this is a hard thing. And when it works, it's extraordinary. I don't know which one of you made the comments about it's one of the hardest things we do. And I hated it. Somebody said that. I hated it, but it was really, I learned a lot from doing it. Okay. My daughter hated the bar. Didn't pass it in the state, just, since you gave me a minute, so take it. So but the bar, the state of Washington and the state of Oregon now implemented a performance assessment to enter the bar. Because the bar test itself, it tests something, persistence, stamina, ability to respond to and remember very explicit things. But a performance assessment shows you whether you can do it. Which would you rather score and which would you rather have? Somebody who went through 2 grueling days of utter misery in a gymnasium with number 2 pencils, or a computer that hopefully doesn't break down, or somebody who's actually done the work. We're doing the hard thing here. And this year has been a challenging year as this state, as other states have done, has considered, should we still have this? Why or why not? And some states have moved away from it. Or moved it into a more formative space and not a summative space. And California's legislature decided not to do that this year. They decided that that keeping it was worthwhile, but that it absolutely needed this kind of review, this kind of scrub. How, we wrote the law in 1997 and have been working on performance assessments. This state of California has been an incubator for this idea, where the PACT and the first version of Cal-TPA taught each other something. So the next version of each one was improving on it. We became a community of practice, not a community of competitors, but a community of practice around performance assessment. And there's Fresno saying, yeah, y'all do what you want to do as state assessments, we're doing our own thing, which this law, inviting us to do hard things, allows and encourages. We have a huge opportunity here to think about what this law means and what this performance assessment can do going forward in this context, in this ecosystem. And again, I just can't overstate my gratitude that you all have said yes to come to the table and workshop this and bring us recommendations. So, thank you.
Yeah. All of that. And the other thing, just some of the comments that I heard that really resonated, or I was just so kind of moved by, were the bringing it back to the end user and to the experience of the human being that's on the other end of this. And even thinking about the disparate experience of people who might take the TPA at a university that gives them all kinds of support, and those who might not be able to afford to do half a year of unpaid teaching and are taking it online. And so keeping equity at the center and thinking about however you design this thing, it's going to play out in condition of difference, and being mindful of how that impacts the very teachers that we want to work to recruit to represent the students in their classrooms. I really appreciated lifting up the human experience of this to balance out what can be a theoretical discussion, right? Can quickly dip into, some pretty abstract concepts, but really grounding it in the lived human experience and in equity and in understanding disparate impact. Okay, more mundanely, you may see me like with my, I want to tell you how I capture things. So I have some hearing issues sometimes. And so you may see me giving you my good ear and trying to listen in. Thank you, Uncle Sam, for blowing out my hearing. So, but I want to assure you that what I do when there's a substantive conversation like this in preparation for the next meeting is we take video, and what I do is we transcribe that. We use AI to transcribe that. And then I have a nice write, totally. And and then the other thing I do is I listen to you all in 1.5 speed, which is so if there was something that I did not catch on these note-taking slides, I would just want to assure you that this is not the last time I will hear what you said. Your voices may be a little bit squeakier, but not the last time. The other piece, that's it. Yeah. And so I wanted to take a moment just to preview tomorrow, and you all are already well on your way to tomorrow in terms of the questions, because it can be hard, especially in a work group dynamic where maybe you're used to coming in and jumping to advocacy. It can be hard to take a moment and hold yourself in a space of inquiry. Right? That can be challenging. But here you are asking questions, asking good questions, asking questions that need to be asked. And you're going to have some time to do that in smaller groups tomorrow. And so I want to show you some of the resources that we have curated for you. And this went out on an email, a couple, 10 days, a week ago. So you've all probably seen it. Among the 10 emails that I sent you, I promise we'll streamline communications going forward. That'll be a thing. But I want to show you what we have. And this is intended to be a starter set, not the comprehensive sort of document that contains the world of knowledge that we are only to consider, but just a jumping off point. So you can always access the meetings from the ctc.ca.gov/commission/meetings upcoming. You can just type in upcoming meetings CTC. You might get the California Transportation Commission, but we're just under that and working to be number one on the Google search. And you'll see the upcoming meetings. And I say this is where all the meetings are. So if you're interested in the commission meeting coming up or a committee on accreditation, you can also check out those pieces there. But when you go to the agenda, you scroll down.
Should that be showing up on the screen?
It should be. Thank you. I'm sharing an app instead of my window. I did mention up front that I am new to C's here. Or
amazing.
Thank you. So here's all of the things I said before. Again, it looks like this. Okay? And so our virtual audience has clicked on the meetings here. You can click on the agenda. This is where it's posted to meet our Bagley-Keene requirements. And there's some front matter that, for access, guidelines, all of those pieces. And then you get down to the agenda and you can see there's a color coding for the action items, the information items, and the information action items. And this is where people can present public comment. The PowerPoint presentation that we create is always going to be linked to the first item. Right? So you have it right there, top of inbox, so to speak. And then if there are any handouts that we are giving you, we also share them with the public. So handout 5A1, which is what we did with the guidance document, and 44320.2 and 0.4, that is linked here. And so as we think about tomorrow, this is where we are in closing remarks. As you think about tomorrow, we have a couple of handouts I wanted to point you towards that were, in the communication. We go to handout 2. So these are some of the core resources. They're organized into a few sections. So you may have heard, we talked about teacher performance expectations. What are those? Here's a brief summary of what those are, and it's a link to them so you can review them. What are the teacher performance assessment design standards? So we heard a comment about, how we may want to, this might be a location for recommendations in the way that we could affect all TPA models. There are the teacher performance assessment design standards. We also have common standards and multiples. And so now we're getting into accreditation, common standards, the preliminary multiple subject credential program standards. There's an accreditation framework. I heard the question about program completer surveys, like is there qualitative data? I believe that was you, Mr. Morgan. And so here is a cornucopia of data. Okay. Of data, not just program completer surveys, but there's the commission is blessed with a person who, I believe her name is Fifi Lau, who builds beautiful data tables and dashboards in a way that is so accessible. So you can see some of Fifi's good work here. And then we get to commission agenda items. So 5E here, this is the item that created this work group that was heard in August. And so if you kind of want to see a write-up of that or see your names on a commission agenda item, there it is. This is, I want to elevate this because Commissioner Anna Marie Francois, in her public comments during the meeting, really sort of asked the work group to consider this. And so this is the public comment from Education Trust West. And so that is there. And, so tonight, this evening, please take a moment to review what this comment hopes we consider in the work group. This is much easier. All right. Now we're going back in time, October 2023. This is the annual report on the commission approved teaching performance assessments. So Amy and her team, they do an annual report on teacher performance assessments. This is where you're going to see a lot of the data on pass rates, disaggregated for race and other ways. And then this is another item, which was in December, options to study and improve TPAs. And then this is some research that was shared by the Learning Policy Institute on the teacher performance assessments. I'm going to just kind of move into this more quickly here.
Which one of these took up the secondary passing standard?
The secondary standard was taken up in October.
Was with the data on impact?
It was December, wasn't it?
So it's the December.
In December. That's right, 2D. Here are some model resources. So if you want to sort of get a feel for what the TPA, what the Cal TPA, maybe you're coming from Ed TPA world and you're wondering like, what about the Cal TPA? There's a program guide that really kind of gets into it and provides you a really good conceptual overview as well as nuts and bolts through all the things. And so here's another resource. And then there's the FAST manual 2.0. I hear the 3.0 is going to drop soon. Is that
being piloted even as we speak?
amazing? You heard it here first. But the 2.0 is up here, and then there's the TPA website. You can kind of cruise around there as well. Here are some secondary sources that have been really central to the discussion around TPA and the evolution of 1263 beginning in October and moving through amendments that happened to the bill in the assembly. So looking at this is actually historical, or not historical, but a couple of years old, right? The Umbro, yeah. So this invites you to look across the comparability of the Cal TPA, the Ed TPA, and the FAST. This is the California Teachers Association Performance Assessment Survey. And so I forget who was asking about feedback from candidates on experience, but you'll see data on 1,284 teacher candidates or current teachers looking back on their performance assessment experience, as well as their subjective responses to the open-ended questions. So it's the item that was presented to the commission, there's the data table summaries, and then the responses. This is the article from Cat Peck, am I right, Dr. Sandy?
Yes, this is
Would you like to speak to that?
I can say it's a review of the research literature nationally that was done for the National Academy of Education. It's a recently published working paper that digs into how performance assessment is or might be considered for use in teacher preparation evaluation, evaluating teacher preparation using PAs. So there's some really interesting data in there about how programs might be informed by how candidates are doing on their performance assessments.
So that's all you need to do for this evening. I'm prepared to speak to you. There will be a performance assessment. Sorry. There will be an activity where we're going to use we're going to dive into the ambiguity. We're going to embrace the complexity. And handout 1 can kind of help you find your way in that. So the idea is tomorrow, we're going to do an overview of the focus areas. And the focus areas are just kind of, we're taking the guidance that was put out, right? So those numbered items that are the things we need to make recommendations on, and we're just chunking them a little bit. And so you're going to spend some time tomorrow in smaller groups. So this divided by 4, focusing on first the design, the thing of performance assessment, and the implementation. So there's going to be design, there's going to be implementation. And what handout 1A does is it might help focus your inquiry this evening. It kind of breaks out these concepts that you all were getting to already today, right? So the things that may be ambiguous or that may be subjective that could perhaps use some operationalization or calibration, or what are we talking about here? So there's going to be a discussion first about what do we mean by these things? What could we mean by these things? What should we mean by these things? And then, and then you have that number 2 is deceptively small, but it's a big chunk of what do you need to know? What resources? And we're going to challenge you to hold yourselves in that inquiry space and also connect with one another. You start to kind of come together as teams and to get voices into the room. And then you're going to switch, so you'll have round 1, will be about an hour and 10 minutes of focusing on performance assessment. Round 2, about the same amount of time focusing on accreditation. The third part will be to do a group share out, right? So you can hear so we can sort of take those smaller conversations, bring them back to the whole. Again, so that the public is only available to be in one of your breakout rooms at a time. So we want to make sure that we're taking those separate conversations and merging them back in so that it is accessible. We're not jumping to recommendations. Well, actually, I can't say that. This is your committee. We recommend that you don't jump to recommendations quite yet, but we wanted to put them on the paper so you could just kind of keep them in mind that this is where we're driving. In case you want to have discussions about things like, well, what grain size of a good recommendation or what might be anticipated, that is there. So this could help focus your inquiry in the evening. And then we put the purpose up front on each page. That is there to help guide your way. Again, this is not intended to be a comprehensive source. If there are things that you want to have added to our compendium, please let me know. If there are great articles or resources, please do let me know. And we'll curate them. We'll curate them and we'll share them publicly so that everybody gets to see them. And then the last thing I'll say is on the note of public comment, if your colleagues, if the people that you work with, if your students, anybody that has a stake in this or a thought about this, and they don't have to anchor, please invite them to submit their thoughts. It doesn't have to be a 4-page letter. It can just be a thought. They can add their comments and they don't need to add them to each. We have that general comment item on each agenda. For that purpose, it could just be tagged there. So please do share this with them. You could send it. So if you click on this little copy link here, that copies a link to the item. And so you could invite them, or you could invite them to look at it and then to submit comment here. And I think the more outside sources we can bring into would be wonderful. And so with that, I offer it back to the chair. And
thank you very much. Commissioner Brown, did you have any comments for the closing?
I just had one observation, and this really sums up how I'm feeling right now. As Adam was sharing the resource page with all of the links, I just scanned the room and almost everyone was smiling. And I thought, oh my gosh, at 4:55, after we've done all this deep thinking about the complex task that lays before us, and this room is excited when Adam's going, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And we just thought we have the right people in the room to do the work. And I just have so much gratitude. So thank you so much.
We have Commissioner Francois still? Yeah, okay, great. Any comments from Tina, since you haven't had the opportunity?
Just an apology. I'm so sorry, and I'm sad that I'm not there. I sat in the airport for 4.5 hours, and then it's too small and too loud. Had I stayed one more, the plane just took off 5 minutes ago. If I had stayed. So I hope I can be there tomorrow. I'm figuring that out. And meanwhile, I listened the whole day as best I could. And I really appreciated the different perspectives, and I took notes, and I'm going to go back and listen to some of the things that I missed and hopefully be ready to have a discussion with you all tomorrow. So I look forward to that.
Good luck. We hope you make it.
Thank you.
I wonder if she, Tina, can you hear me, Tina?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, since we had the opportunity to do introductions all the way around this morning, we haven't had an opportunity to hear your introduction. Name, your kind of history with this work, what you're doing.
Sure. I'm Tina Sloan. I have a pretty long history with the teacher performance assessments. Early in my teacher education career was when SB 2042 came out. If we were implementing it, I was part of the design teams for PACT, one of the earliest assessments. I've done a variety of consulting work for other states and other programs on the PACT, the RDI-TPA. I've then have served with the commission for a very long time as the University of California representative, and then later on as a faculty member and chair of the commission until December of 2022, when I retired as a professor from UC Santa Barbara. So another thing that I did that I think was one of the most two of the most valuable experiences was one, running a teacher education program while we were developing TPAs and learning how to implement them and do local scoring. And then the second one was that UC Santa Barbara hosted the PACT implementation conference for several years from the beginning. And that's where people from different programs shared best practices around how they were doing the work. And we learned a lot from each other, I think. And I was hearing a lot of that in the room today and about the educative nature and how we do that. So anyway, I have a lot of history with performance assessment and assessment work and teacher education. That said, I haven't been a program director for several years now, so I appreciate our teachers and teacher educators in the room who are helping me learn what's happening at this moment and where we need to go. So that's me.
Thank you. All right, with that, thank you for the work that you've done today. And at this time, I now recess day one of our work group. We will reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning in this room. Have a good night.